Barefoot and Pregnant, BBW Paranormal Shapeshifter Romance, Paranormal Dating Agency, Book 10. Written by Millie Taiden. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. 1. Cassandra Grimaldi, a.k.a. Cassie to her friends, glanced at Jerry with a raised brow. The Latina wasn't known for listening to nonsense. Another planet, you say? She had been working with Jerry for exactly 1 month. She organized the hell out of Jerry's office space and apartment. Jerry loved to travel, and it was clear she hadn't been keeping up to date with her files, mail, or fan letters. Who knew a matchmaker got so much fan mail? It was a wonder she had utilities. Always blunt, Jerry told Cassie she would be the perfect fit to be her assistant. "I have a great sense for these things," Jerry had said. With the holidays having just passed, Cassie knew things were probably going to get hectic with Jerry, who got more mail than the president. It had all been going so well. Jerry had given Cassie free rein of moving things and making the office tidy and orderly. Cassie wasn't the most detail-oriented person, considering her ex-boyfriend, also her ex-boss, had not only stolen from her, but cheated on her. Now, Jerry looked her straight in the eye and said they were going to another planet. Yeah, another planet. As in, not in this solar system, and probably not even in this reality. Damn it. She'd been so sure Jerry had her shit together. She didn't bother hiding her disbelief as Jerry spoke. "I matched Bella with Alex. He's the king of Nova Aurora." Jerry sipped her tea. Outside, the snow fell in fluffy white flakes that made Cassie feel like a kid again. "Now they want me to meet the babies." Alien shifter royalty. Right. "And you want me to go with you?" Cassie asked. She wondered how long before she could find a new job once they sent Jerry to the nut house. "Yes, I can see you really think I've lost my mind, and I just got myself a one-way ticket to Crazyland." She nodded unapologetically. Cassie didn't hold back. Ever. She knew Jerry saw it in her face, so why bother trying? "You are a really nice lady, but for you to think there are aliens and you can travel to their planet worries me. Mainly because, well, I like you. Now I have to find another job," she admitted with a sigh. Jerry burst into laughter. "It is so refreshing to have someone with your candor around." "Right. I'm a riot." She refilled Jerry's tea automatically. When she'd been a kid, she loved having tea parties with her stuffed animals along with her dad. He'd been amazing about doing girly things with her when her mother passed. Those were the good memories, the ones she liked to think about. In some cases, he'd forgotten she had feelings, but she guessed that was the male side that wanted his fat little girl to fit in with the popular kids in school. Kids that belonged to his employees and other big shots. Him, being a top executive at a financial services company, meant he had an image to uphold in public. One Cassie didn't fit into to this day. "How about you humor me? I know you're a skeptic, but what if I'm right?" Jerry's grin widened and a dimple showed. The older woman was truly stunning, and Cassie was sure she was getting male attention even more now with her fun personality. "What if you are holding yourself back from learning about another culture? Another life form?" Fuck. Why had she told Jerry she was a huge fan of the Discovery Channel and watching anything with aliens and animals? She had a massive fascination for aliens, space, and things unexplained. Except for ghosts. She totally believed in that and wanted to keep those away. Jerry sat up, placing the once again empty teacup on the saucer with a little clink. "Come on, Cassie. Another world. It could be just what you need." Cassie bit her lip, unsure what to do. On one hand, she wanted to know if Jerry really was crazy. She did seem very intelligent. On the other hand, if it was just a hoax, she'd feel like an idiot for even humoring Jerry. "I have to think about this." she finally replied. Her brain told her she shouldn't even bother, but Jerry appeared so lucid. It was the damn curious side of her wanting to dispel the notion there was a possibility it was real. "Take the weekend. I'm heading out Monday evening. We can discuss it again in the morning when you come in." She nodded. She had dinner with her family, a weekly affair that always ended up grating on her nerves. This week, though, she looked forward to spending time with her cousin Ivan and his sister Ivy. Maybe she should run this by them, see what they thought. They were as close to siblings as she got, and probably the only members of the family who didn't judge her size. Two. Talon Arctos let his anger loose with a massive roar. A roar so loud, the other men sitting around his cabin headquarters turned to glance at him with open shock. Though Talon was not the most social bear clan leader, he got the job done. His clan built giant cabins without wasting the resources on their planet. Most of the cabins were built in unusual locations and used caves and other areas available as extensions to their build.
"What do you mean Paxton isn't coming with me?"
He ground the words out, curling his hands into fists and wanting to smash it on the table so hard he'd probably break the antique into smithereens. His right-hand security officer, Dylan Sroden, grimaced.
"I'm sorry, Tal, but Paxton was pissed that you said he wasn't allowed to spend time with both Lachelle and Marla."
Tal clenched his teeth so hard he swore he was going to break his jaw. His brother tested his patience every single day of his life since his parents had died. As clan leader, Tal had no time to give in to Paxton's petty mood swings.
"You realize this is all my mother's fault,"
he spat, while trying not to be angry at his deceased parents. His mother had given Paxton everything he ever wanted and treated him like a baby well into his adulthood.
"Don't be so angry,"
Gable, a younger bear who was friends with Paxton, said.
"He's a bit frustrated."
Talon stared down the other bear until he glanced away. There was no excuse for Paxton's attitude and actions lately. He'd pushed his limits and was giving the clan a bad name.
"You think his wanting to lead 2 females on and getting their hopes up is mere frustration I should tolerate?"
he growled at Gable. Now Tal needed Paxton to step up and make his own mark in their family business. The business wasn't a necessity, since their clan owned the western forest down to the majestic falls of Aurora. The vast forest land was perfect for living, and with a giant river to feed from and farm, they needed for nothing. But Tal's father had liked to work. He'd liked to do things with his hands, and when he created their secondary family home out of a cave and combined it with a cabin to create a new type of living quarters, the rest of the clan had loved it. Word got around. Everyone wanted them to build for them. From the Dragos to the Tigers to the Jaguars. Hell, the group had even gotten requests to visit Galaxa, one of the neighboring planets, and build for them. The king of the alien warriors wanted new hunting lodges, and Tal had been talking to him about doing business.
"I'm sorry."
Gable stepped back, his long hair covering most of his face as he put his head down, not meeting Talon's gaze.
"It is the fact everyone has made excuses for him since he was a child that has made him into the mess he is today." "You're right."
Gable nodded, his voice low, and though apologetic, sounding annoyed.
"I just think maybe you could let him decide who he wants to mate between the 2 females without interfering. I wouldn't have interfered if their parents didn't come to me demanding Paxton stop what he's doing."
Tal's bear roared inside.
"We are not like the weak human males who go back and forth between females to decide which one they like most. We allow our animal to choose, and then we mate. Simple."
Anger lit and diffused in Gable's eyes.
"I understand."
He turned to go.
"I'll see if I can talk some sense into him."
Tal watched him go. He didn't like the way Paxton and his friend wanted to do things their way without any repercussions. That's not how the Arctos clan worked, and it never would, as long as Talon was in charge.
"Paxton is acting like a kid instead of a grown man."
The bear inside Talon wanted to come out and destroy something. Anything. He'd been edgy for months. Between his brother and Tal's refusal to mate, the animal was pissed, horny, and ready to break down a few trees.
"I'm sorry,"
Dylan sighed, lifting and dropping his large shoulders, his arms flexed in the sleeveless shirts they liked to work in. The western forest was always cool. Leaves fell and grew constantly, giving the place a look that resembled fall and spring on Earth. Tal had seen enough videos of Earth to hurt his heart. The way they destroyed the forests and didn't put trees back when they took them down. It was shameful.
"I wanted him to come along and visit with Alex so we could show the king that Paxton is growing into his position as my second in command,"
Talon growled. He marched to the giant wall of glass that immediately opened to let him out onto the edge of the cliff, where his office cabins were located. Dylan's footsteps followed.
Go see Alex. Meet the future queen of Aurora and her brothers. Also, Alex's queen, Bella, is really nice. You'll like her. I don't care for these kinds of events, Dylan."
He turned to face his friend. Frustration filled Dylan's gaze.
"I know you want me to be more outgoing, but that's why I sent you to the wedding. This was going to be my first time meeting the queen and the babies, and I was counting on Paxton to help make this smoother, to show Alex we are stable up here."
Dylan frowned.
"I still don't get where he is getting that you don't have the clan under control. Someone's been complaining to him. Alex didn't say who, but he stated he wanted to see me there to speak and make sure we are all on the same page about our responsibility to our people."
Like Tal could ever ignore his people. His clan was his family. His father had ingrained that in him from birth. The Arctos clan was his life. They'd always been there for each other since birth.
"I'll look for Paxton and send him to Alex's castle,"
Dylan said. A determined look was in his pale hazel eyes that Tal had come to know he could count on. Dylan did his job as his friend and security chief, and he took it seriously. Back when they'd been kids, Dylan had always been the one to get Tal out of his grumpy moods. He was truly Talon's best friend. When his parents died just a few short years ago, he found only Dylan understood Tal's need to ensure the clan stayed strong and tight. Tal slipped beat-up fingers through his short brown hair. He'd been carving wood earlier. Though he could have done it with his claws and saved some time, he'd chosen to use the tools of his ancestors, the same ones his father used to create some of the furniture in the house, depicting images of the forest and the bears of generations past.
"I don't even know if I should go at this point,"
he muttered. Anger flared brighter inside him. He was sick and tired of Paxton's spoiled brat attitude. His brother was not getting his way with Tal, and he needed to realize that sooner rather than later.
"You have to. Since your parents died 2 years ago, you've been a recluse. Alex has been good about letting you report via communicator, but I'm sure he wants you to go and talk to him. Show his wife and babies the respect pretty much everyone else on the planet already has."
Dylan slapped a hand on Tal's shoulder.
"You used to be friends. Alex has never done you wrong." "You're right,"
he admitted ruefully. Alex had given his clan time to grieve for their leaders, and Tal the space to get his shit together. He had to go and meet Bella, as well as the babies.
"Hey, maybe while you're there, you can find someone to spend some time with."
Dylan's lips broke into a wide, knowing grin.
"I know you have a lot on your plate right now with Paxton, but why not look for feminine company? Because females demand time. Time I don't have right now. Once I decide what to do about my brother, then I can think of settling down."
His bear grumbled inside. He already wanted a mate. He'd been trying to get Talon to find him a woman for some time now.
"You know, I heard Jerry Wilder, the matchmaker, will be at the welcome event for the future queen and her brothers,"
Dylan said. A curious look of interest had taken over his face.
"Why not talk to her? See if she could do you the favor of finding the woman meant to be with you."
He frowned.
"I haven't met her before. She knew my parents, but this is not the time. Not yet. Your 40th birthday will be on the same day of the event."
Dylan shrugged.
"That's usually the time our inner animals demand a mate, Tal. Aren't you getting the urge yet?"
He snapped a glare at his friend.
"Of course I am. but I control him."
As if the bear knew he'd been talking about him, the animal pulled at his control, making him tense his body so his muscles wouldn't contort and the shift take over. Three. Cassie glanced at her dad's winter retreat's pristine lawn. His wife, Victoria, hired the best landscapers in town and had them design the ultimate garden. It was so colorful and well put together, Cassie couldn't deny its beauty. Unlike where their main home was in the snow and freezing temperatures, this part of the country was warm. The heat levels were high, and her tank top had already started to attach to her back on her walk from the driveway to the house.
"Are you here for dinner, Miss Cassandra?"
Julio, the driver, greeted her with a warm smile. She pasted a smile over her frown and nodded. "Hi, Julio. I am. It's Friday night. That means dinner. Are Ivan and Ivy here yet?" Though her father and his wife lived in the same town as Cassie, up north, this week's dinner was at their beach house, a short 3-hour flight south. With her dad's money came a private jet, one he had sent to bring her and any other family members to whatever house he was currently staying at with Victoria.
"They have already arrived. They went down to the beach, but should be back by dinner time."
He frowned, as if reading the strain on her face.
"Do you need me to carry your bag inside?"
She glanced down at her Louis Vuitton overnight bag and scrunched her nose. "We go through this every week, Julio. I can carry an overnight bag, and if it has wheels, I can drag anything." She laughed. "I'm not Victoria. I don't need everyone to carry a single sheet of paper for me." Julio nodded, a twinkle of humor in his gaze.
"I understand."
He chuckled.
"You will always be like your mother, so independent."
She loved hearing others say she reminded them of her mom. Her mother had been such a strong woman, one Cassie would have loved to remember. "Thank you. How's things been down here?" Julio shifted his gaze away from her face to the house.
"Things are interesting."
Oh. She had a feeling something was going on. "Tell me now if I have to figure out some hotel accommodations for the night." Not that her father would let her go. Hell, with Ivan and Ivy at the house, there was a snowball's chance in hell she'd get a chance to go anywhere. Julio shook his head, the silver in his hair catching in the sunlight. He was just as old as her dad, in his early 60s, and had been working for her family most of his life. Unlike her dad, Julio had been with his wife Estrella for over 40 years. Since Cassie's mother, Lucy, had passed, her father had dated and been single for a long time, until a few years ago when he met and married Victoria, a woman younger than Cassie's 37 years by nearly a decade. Victoria was incredibly high maintenance, and her father did something with his new wife he'd never done with Cassie. He indulged her in anything and everything, from never lifting a finger to carry her own handbag to ensuring her shopping trips were funded no matter the cost. It was weird to see him that way with Victoria, when he'd been the opposite with Cassie. He taught Cassie to be independent, to never need or ask anyone for anything, which is why when her asshole of an ex took off with her money, she had to figure it out on her own. She wasn't going to tell her dad, and she wasn't asking him for money. He'd always warned her against having anyone but a professional touch her money. She allowed the belief that there was shared trust between her and her ex lead her to make stupid mistakes.
"Come on,"
Julio said, and opened the front door for her.
"I can have Estrella make you a drink, if you'd like."
She shook her head. She'd already had vodka and cranberry on the flight down. Inside what most would call a mansion, but Cassie considered one of her family homes, the holiday decorations had been taken down and replaced with fresh, colorful flowers. The decor and multiple vases with family photos gave the big house a homey feel. "Cassandra!" Victoria called from the top of the spiral stair landing. Cassie glanced up and watched Victoria glide a few steps down the stairs in a perfectly pressed yellow linen dress and matching yellow gold jewelry. Though the bangles, earrings, and necklace were not gaudy by any means, they were worth more than Cassie's car. She shook her head at the fact she'd never figure out why people paid exorbitant amounts of money to wear someone else's name or initials on their body. Shouldn't they be the ones getting paid to promote the designer? Hi, Victoria. Querida, how many times do I have to ask you to call me Vicky? I feel so old when you call me by my full name when no one else does. Old? Cassie gritted her teeth. Was she serious? Victoria's perfect, long, highlighted hair and big gray eyes made her look exotic. Her darker skin, like Cassie's, showed off her Latin heritage. Unlike Cassie, who had big curves and a large body, Victoria had multiple trainers and personal chefs that kept her little body looking tighter than a straining rubber band. Cassie had tried the trainers and restricted eating since childhood. Nothing worked. She guessed Victoria's body wasn't set into being too curvy to handle. Victoria's combination of expensive and well-maintained beauty made Cassie feel old, tired, and wrinkled. Cassie glanced down at her sketchy pajama pants and her favorite tank top that read, "Don't let Monday in." Since she traveled alone on her dad's jet, she never worried about dressing up. Ah, hell, she never really worried about dressing up unless there was a reason for it. "How are you?" Cassie asked, taking the first few steps up the marble staircase and gliding her hand over the hand-carved wood of the railing. She loved the stairs. It was one of the showcase items that made this home not just grand, but memorable. She continued up towards Victoria, watching the other woman. Victoria made a dramatic display of sighing and leaning into the railing at the top of the stairs. "Exhausted. The past few weeks have been draining." Cassie frowned. Though Victoria might be dramatic 24/7, she never complained of exhaustion. "The holidays too much for you?" Victoria's gray eyes went wide, and a slow smile curled over her pouty red lips. "It was lovely, but we missed you. Why didn't you come down?" Cassie hadn't been up to it. She loved the holidays, but she hadn't been in the mood to explain to her father why she hadn't gotten anyone gifts and plaster a fake smile on her face for the sake of his and Victoria's friends. "I wasn't feeling too good." Victoria took steps back up to the landing. "Are you okay? Is it contagious?" Cassie cleared her throat and pushed laughter bubbling up back down. "Not that kind. I was just not feeling very festive and didn't want to mess up your parties and gatherings." She continued up the stairs until she reached the landing and took a few steps to the left wing where her rooms were located. "I'm going to go shower and change for dinner." "Good idea." Victoria glanced her up and down. "Oh, I've been meaning to tell you that one of my trainers will be going up your way to teach a new class at a brand new, high-tech facility for people looking to get fit. I wasn't sure if you were interested, since Ricardo told me that you used to work out a little when you were younger." A little? Figured her father would dismiss her exercise routine because the results hadn't been what he'd expected. Cassie still worked out. She was in pretty good shape and could probably outrun a ton of people if it came down to it, but you couldn't tell from her size. "Thanks, but I'm okay." She turned away from Victoria and headed down the pastel purple hallway to her rooms. Jerry's words came back to haunt her. Visit another planet. She snorted as she opened her bedroom door and tossed her bag on one of the antique purple and gold sofas in her room. The room had been decorated multiple times through Cassie's life. When she'd been a kid, there had been a princess theme, complete with a throne chair to play queen with Ivan and Ivy. In her teen years, the room had transformed into one of the least favorites for her dad. Gothic and dark, the walls had been painted black and white with sugar skulls covering every surface. He'd gotten angry when she'd wanted to get a sugar skull tattoo and made her promise not to. Once she'd moved out, the room had been professionally decorated in her favorite colors, gold and purple, and turned into a room fit for royalty. With a giant crystal chandelier glimmering soft light into the room, it made the space so inviting. An antique Persian carpet had been placed underneath her bed. She still shook her head at the price tag on it, and most of it sat unseen. Strategic sitting areas had been set around the room and went into her second room, where her closet and bathroom were located. Large vases filled with purple roses welcomed her into her room. Estrella always went above and beyond to make Cassie feel welcomed. She stripped out of her clothes and turned the radio on in her bathroom. She'd shower and change and hopefully spend some time with her cousins, without wanting to kill Victoria for once. Four. Cassie finished putting her long hair into a ponytail and adding a clip to make it a bit more formal. She'd gone ahead and worn a dress because she'd been told there was another person joining them for dinner, and she didn't want to be the only one in her pajamas. A knock sounded on her door while she put on lip gloss. This was as made up as she got. "Come in." "Cassie?" Ivy called out from the other room. Moments later, her cousin waltzed in, wearing a pair of skin-tight jeans and an off-the-shoulder glittery top with heels that made Cassie wince. "Wow, look at you. You look gorgeous," she said to a stunning Ivy. Now she wanted to change, but it was too late. Ivy threw her arms around Cassie and hugged her tightly. The sweet scent of her cousin's perfume drifted to her nose and made her smile. Ivy loved her sexy fragrances. "I haven't seen you in weeks. Sucks that you didn't come down for the holiday parties. Victoria actually made this place look amazing." Cassie knew. She'd seen the photos in the holiday edition of House and Garden magazine. The theme for this year had been ice blue and silver. The entire house looked like it was made of ice. On one hand, it had been stunning, but on the other, it didn't look homey. Cassie missed when she was a kid, and her dad let her decorate the tree with Estrella, Ivy, and Ivan. "I want to change," Cassie threw out suddenly, looking through her closet for something else to wear. "No!" Ivy screeched, stopping her on her tracks. "You look great in that dress. I'm just not feeling up to wearing a dress, or I'd be in one too." That part was true. Ivy never gave up the chance to dress up. "You sure it's not too much?" Ivy raised a dark brow over her perfectly made-up brown eyes that reminded Cassie of her own. "Are you crazy? Have you forgotten where we are? Victoria will probably be wearing something from the Paris Fashion Week." Cassie giggled and nodded. "You're right. Like I could be overdressed next to her." "Come on, there's someone Ivan wants you to meet," Ivy said, tugging her toward the door. "Really, Ivy? Did you not listen the last time we spoke about what happened with my ex?" Ivy stopped, turned to face her, and sighed. "I know, and I'm sorry. He was a douche, but you deserve so much better. I need to figure out my finances before I go trying to find a man." Ivy made a dismissive gesture with her hand. "Just ask your dad for your trust fund." She shook her head. "Hell no. That money will be for my kids one day." She scrunched up her nose as she walked arm in arm with Ivy. "If I ever have any. Or for my retirement. One or the other." "But you need it now." "No. I'm still young. I can work and take care of myself. I don't need someone to take care of me," she said with authority. "I certainly don't need my dad's money when I can work and make my own." Ivy's bold red lips curved into a smile. "This is why I love you. You never take the easy way out." She rolled her eyes and chuckled. "Yeah, okay. I don't know how commendable that is, considering I let myself get taken for a sucker by a man." "You'll figure it out," Ivy said. She led her into the parlor next to the formal dining room, where dinner would be served. "Now come on. Ivan brought a friend he'd like you to meet." They entered the parlor, where Ivan stood talking to another man. A really big guy. Tall, broad-shouldered, and smiling at her like he'd known her all his life. The man instantly made her comfortable. "Cassie, get over here," Ivan prompted with a wave of his hand.
This is Massimo," he said, introducing the man. "He's a good friend of mine and happens to be in town for a few meetings, so I thought we could all hang out this weekend."
Cassie smiled at Massimo. "Hi, nice to meet you." He took her offered hand and brought it to his lips, placing a soft kiss there. It was new, a man doing that to her. The blue in his eyes turned bright.
"It's a pleasure to meet you, Cassandra."
She stared openly at his eyes. They reminded her of Jerry's, which meant he had to be a shifter. What kind, though? With his size and that smile, she would believe him to be a feline for sure. "Oh, good," she heard Victoria say from the door. "You're all here." Cassie turned to face Victoria and her father and frowned. Her dad watched her intensely, while at the same time curling an arm protectively around Victoria. "We have some news to share," Victoria gushed and glanced up at Cassie's dad, Ricardo.
"We're going to have a baby."
He said the words with pride and bent down to give Victoria a kiss.
"Can I get you a drink?"
Massimo offered. "Scotch for Cassie, Massimo," Ivy said. She loves her dad's super expensive scotch. Cassie nodded, her throat dry and her head spinning. Victoria had always made it clear she didn't want children. Hell, even her father had been adamant about no more children due to his older age and inability to keep up with toddlers. Now they were changing things. The look of triumph Victoria gave her made Cassie want to leave then and there. She wouldn't, though. Her father was a grown man, and if he wanted to have kids with someone 1/3 his age, that wasn't Cassie's business. It still would make for an awkward weekend. "Make it a double." 5. Cassie glanced at Jerry and said the words she'd been thinking all weekend. "I'm going to take a big leap here and say I'll come with you." Whether it was a pretend trip or not, she needed something to take her mind off her bank account. She'd spent time with Massimo, Ivy, and Ivan, and found out Massimo was a bear shifter who loved to flirt. He had gone out of his way to ask her out and proposition her. Though he was handsome, with his bright blue eyes and wavy blonde hair, she hadn't felt that chemistry she'd hoped for, so she declined his offers. They chose to stay in touch and see about being friends. He was nice, and they'd had fun over the weekend. The time spent with Massimo made her realize she might be able to find a shifter she could have chemistry with. Plus, what if this shifter planet really existed? She needed to know the truth. "Wonderful," Jerry said, as if realizing she had no real comebacks. "We leave in the morning, pack only a few items of clothing. The weather where Bella lives is very breezy and summery. Besides, we'll get you one of the amazing dress fabrics you will fall madly in love with." "Say this is true. How long would we be gone?" 2 or 3 days at most." Jerry pursed her lips. "I really do have a lot of work to catch up on still." "Suppose I believe you and this is all real." She shook her head at her own words. "Real? Aliens? Right. What exactly can I expect?" "Well, there will be a big party to welcome the new babies to the royal family. You should expect to see a lot of shifters." Oh, yeah, the shifters. That's really why she wanted to go now that she'd had more experience with a male shifter. Massimo was hot in his own clean-cut sort of way. Still, Jerry had said so much stuff that Cassie had totally ignored because she truly believed the old lady was nuts. Now she wished she could remember. "Are they friendly?" She'd yet to meet others aside from Jerry and now Massimo on Earth. It was pretty clear shifters were at the top of the food chain. Humans commingled with them on Earth, but mainly because the number of shifters superseded humans in most places. So people were used to them. Not to mention the shifter males were hot. Like, make your panties catch fire hot. "Generally," Jerry replied. "You have your bad apples, like any other place, but Aurora isn't like Earth. Women with curves are highly prized and wanted by male shifters for mates." She snorted in laughter. "Yeah, okay. Now I really know you've lost your mind. and made this place up. I have yet to meet a single guy who won't tell me I'm still young enough to lose weight and look good. That's because human males are idiots, darling. This was true. Still. Come on, Jerry, she started. You can't really expect me to believe that. A planet where fat girls are not made fun of? That we aren't pushed to the side for sexier, thinner chicks, and, more importantly, aren't made to feel like crap because we are bigger? Just saying it sounds fake. Jerry sighed with a shake of her head. Oh, wow. This place has done a number on you. Maybe. Possibly. Okay, yes, it had. She'd lived all her life listening to the daughters of the women her dad dated, calling her Miss Piggy, and the sons of her dad's employees telling her they wouldn't date her even if her dad paid them. The worst was probably when her own father had seen her work hard at losing weight and being healthy, and instead of encouraging her to keep going, he'd ask her if she was cheating at night or get angry at her lack of visible progress. The memories of the pain she'd suffered from strangers, classmates, and her own father had never erased from her mind. It had never truly gone away. Not that it ever would. She'd used that pain to learn to become emotionally stronger, to not let others hurt her over her size or shape. She'd never gotten skinny. She'd grown bigger. Diet, exercise, and healthy eating hadn't done squat to reduce her size. She'd gone to dietitians and even had multiple medical exams to see if maybe she had medical issues. Nope. Her body just liked being big. Real big. But she adjusted. She learned to like herself and not let her size keep her from doing things slimmer women did, like running, hiking, and when the occasion dictated, dancing. When was the last time you went out with a nice guy who treated you right? Jerry asked. She might have thought the question a joke if there wasn't real interest in Jerry's eyes. Seriously? Jerry's brows dipped over her beautiful blue eyes. Yes. Then she smiled. Too many to remember? Hardly. How about never? She could have probably changed that to at least once if she had taken Massimo up on his offer, but she had a feeling he was more interested in a booty call than an actual date. Jerry's eyes widened in surprise. Now you are the one messing with me. Nope, not even a little. She shrugged. As nice as I try to be, most men don't care about a woman's personality. It's her body they're more concerned with, and I don't have one that is sexy. Says who? Every man I've ever met, dated, and the one jerk I was married to for 6 months. If possible, that response made Jerry's eyes widen even more. You've been married? She giggled. I'm 37 years old. I've done it all except finding a man worth my time. Oh, honey, Jerry said, and patted her hand. This trip will be good for you. Don't feel bad. I've learned not to expect a man will show up and make me happy. I have to make myself happy. Jerry nodded. At least you have that right. You should make yourself happy. But wouldn't you like to have more? A nice relationship with someone who loves and wants you? She blew a raspberry. I want all that, yes. Come on, Jerry grinned. Tell me what you want. What you really, really want. Cassie burst into laughter. I want good sex with a non-motorized penis attached to a body that will hold me after. That's it. Jerry stood, her long blue skirt swishing around her legs. You're coming to Aurora, and I promise to find you a mate. Jerry. She laughed at the other woman's outrage. I just want to get laid properly. She might have gotten that with Massimo, but there was no spark. With all his good looks, he hadn't done it for her. I will take that over marriage and relationships any day. Well then, Jerry nodded like she was a genie granting a wish. Great sex it is. Jerry winked. I have a feeling we can get some multiple orgasms in your near future. Yeah. Cassie had a feeling she could get those too, if she took her toy collection on this imaginary trip. 6. Talon glanced at the crowded ballroom. His skin began to prickle and itch. He tugged at the neckline of his shirt. He'd always hated large gatherings. He couldn't pinpoint a reason, but it always made him feel like he was on display. His mother used to love entertaining the clan and other tribe families. She made sure Tal was dressed up and ready to host along with her at all times, whether he wanted to or not.
Tal, good to see you after so many years.
Corral, Alex's security chief, greeted him with a welcoming smile.
Thanks,
he said, looking for a place away from the crowd.
It's been a while.
Corral must have noticed his discomfort because he motioned for him to follow him.
Come on, Alex is looking forward to speaking with you. He was happy to know you decided to come and meet his wife.
Talon's guilt increased over his lack of physical communication with Alex and Corral. They had always been good friends to him. They reached Alex's library and found him filling a glass with the local wine, Sidai.
Alex, look who I found,
Corral joked. Alex turned to face them and grinned. He put the glass down and marched over to Talon to give him a shake of the hand and a half hug with a hard pat on the back of his shoulder.
It's good to see you, Tal. It's been too long. How are you? Doing well. The clan has been steadily adjusting to having me as their leader. We've had minor problems, but otherwise, all seems to be under control.
He told Alex what he knew was true. Alex nodded and returned to the wine.
Can I offer you a glass?
Talon sighed. What the hell? He'd been on edge all day. At least some wine would help him feel more at ease.
Yes. How's your mate and the kids?
A smile, unlike any he'd seen on Alex's face, appeared.
Bella is more amazing than I could have ever hoped. The babies are perfect.
Talon nodded.
I understand the firstborn was a girl.
Alex chuckled and handed him a glass of wine.
Yes, Avery beat her brothers by about a minute. She's the official future queen. And she's got a temper like her father.
Corral laughed. Alex raised a brow, but didn't stop the widening of his smile.
Yeah, she does. The boys are a lot quieter, but I can already see traces of myself in them too. I'm glad you found happiness,
Talon said honestly.
You deserve it. Thanks.
Alex passed Corral a glass of wine and sat on his large emblem chair behind his desk.
I have a few questions for you. Things that keep being brought up.
Talon squeezed his jaw. The desire to argue over whatever anyone was saying stuck in the back of his throat. Instead, he nodded and gulped down his wine.
Go ahead. You have to understand that your clan has gone through significant changes in the past few years.
Alex started.
Your parents died. You took over. The business with the cabins has grown immensely, which, congratulations, are in serious order, he remarked. You've done something no one else has thought to, and kept our natural resources from being exploited. Thanks.
Talon wasn't used to praise. He had a job he liked within his clan, and he did it. Whether it was carving furniture or fixing problems between his people, he knew he was a born leader.
I still don't understand what the problem is within the clan that nobody is telling me.
Alex frowned.
Have you spoken to your females? Some of them are showing signs of being frustrated over their inability to mate the males they want.
Talon shook his head.
I haven't had a single one approach me about mating anyone.
He leaned back in his seat, pressing his back into the cushion.
You already know how mating works, so I won't give you the rundown. Whoever they feel is the one. Nobody can interfere with that. Right. That's why we found this concerning when we got multiple reports of you stopping matings in your clan. What?
He frowned.
I have no idea where that's coming from. Nobody, young or old, has requested my interference with mating. That's not how we operate. I'll take it with a grain of salt that someone is just looking for trouble then,
Alex said, and glanced at Corral.
Clearly there is something we don't know, and I'm sure Talon will now make sure he finds out what is truly happening.
Talon drank more wine.
I've been busy trying to control my younger brother, so I may have missed someone needing my help. What's wrong with Paxton?
Corral stood and refilled his wine, doing the same for Talon and Alex.
He's always been spoiled and feels I'm getting into his business. He doesn't want to make an attempt to learn to be the leader our clan needs. When it comes to our business, he has made no real strides in helping expand our unique cabins. I understand Vander Casval wants you to create some hunting lodges for his people.
Alex named their Galaxan neighbors.
Vander is a good man. The problems with the neighbors to their west side means they train and hunt a lot more than we do. They're not shifters,
Corral supplied with a laugh.
My mate calls them real aliens. Aliens?
Talon frowned.
I don't understand what that means. Don't Earthlings consider aliens to be little green men? Galaxa warriors are not little or green.
Corral nodded.
Exactly. She doesn't know how there's a planet with giant warriors. According to her, our people are the shifter aliens, and Galaxans are alien warriors. Casval has offered something interesting, and I'm definitely considering it.
Talon knew that opening his business into taking on the neighboring clients would spur his clan's stability and allow them to see how prosperous things were.
He is going to be here later at some point. You might want to talk with him in person,
Alex suggested. A soft knock sounded at the door, and a palace worker entered, holding the baby boys.
Ah, there they are,
Alex said with pride as he stood.
Come meet the boys, Aaron and Auden.
Talon stood and took one of the babies offered by the woman, while Alex took the other. He glanced at the baby's caramel skin and big blue eyes. The baby sucked on a plastic piece of something and made sighing noises. Talon fell in love. A quick glance, and he realized both boys looked exactly the same.
You're holding Auden,
Corral supplied, as if realizing Tal was wondering which baby he had.
I noticed their different scents, but physically, how can you tell?
He asked.
Corral has found a distinctive birthmark on the tip of Auden's right earlobe, one Aaron doesn't have, and so it makes it easier for those who are not shifter to tell them apart.
Of course, since each child had his own scent, it was pretty easy for shifters to differentiate one from the other. Humans probably didn't have that. Seven. Cassie held baby Avery in her arms and didn't want to let her go. Ever. She wondered if she could take her back to Earth without getting arrested. Probably not a good idea. The trip to Aurora had been magical. Okay, so at first she'd gotten a bit motion sick when she went through the wormhole thing that sucked the air out of her and thought she was going to die. But then she'd been fine. The planet was beautiful. Purple forests and so many flowers. She could sit for days and stare at them. She likes you, Bella said with a grin. Someone helped Bella, who reminded her a lot of her cousin Ivy, turn a blanket into a dress, and if Cassie hadn't been so mesmerized by the tiny beauty in her arms, she would have been curious about the material of the dress. It's surprising because she doesn't like anyone. Cassie watched Avery yawn and blink her pretty golden eyes at her. The baby cooed and snuggled into Cassie's arms. She was so cute, Cassie's ovaries hurt from how badly she wanted a baby at that moment. Talk about wanting to get knocked up in the worst way. Bella, let me have her. Come on, she whispered and grinned at Avery. I promise to take good care of her. Bella laughed. Alex would hunt you down within 10 seconds of his daughter disappearing. I already feel bad for when she's old enough to get male attention. With those eyes, she's going to be a knockout, Cassie said, and made a kissy face at the baby. You look ready to go out and find yourself a mate, Jerry said when she walked into the nursery next to Bella's suites. Cassie sighed and cuddled Avery closer. How could anyone not want a baby this cute? Thank you, Bella said, and twirled around in the previously strange sheet, now turned into a purple dress, that flowed down her body to caress her curves. The style was the same as Avery's, with the exception that Avery's dress was really long and came with a little headband that matched her eyes. Are you letting Jerry match you up, Cassie? Bella asked, slipping on her sandals. She sat to get her hair pinned up by one of her maids. She wants me to, but I don't know. You said you wanted mind-blowing sex, Jerry reminded her. Jerry? Cassie's cheeks flushed. Don't worry, I know Jerry well enough, and am familiar with her no-filter personality. Bella laughed. In that case, yes, I did say I wanted good sex, but that doesn't mean I want forever. I want a few good orgasms, she told Jerry. What if you can have both a good relationship and great sex? She's got a point, Bella added, closing one eye from the pulling on her hair. She can get you both. If she can, why not take it? Why, indeed? I don't know. I would need to consider it. We've a lot of single men here today, Bella said enthusiastically. I bet Jerry can see if one of them is right for you. I don't know. This sounds too rushed. She noticed Avery watching her avidly and kissed her forehead again. Ah, that soft baby scent was making her crazy. Bella opened her arms when Avery started squirming, and Cassie wanted to say no and keep holding the baby, but she clearly needed a feeding. She handed her to Bella, and a wave of emptiness went through her. She'd never felt this need for a child before. She wasn't sure how to react to the sudden urge to go out and get herself a sperm donor. Come on, Jerry said, grabbing Cassie's hand. Let's show you around and have you meet a few of the eligible bachelors. I feel like I'm on a dating show, she murmured. Good luck, Bella shouted. Go with your gut. It won't steer you wrong. Her gut. Right. At the moment, her gut wanted her to find a man to give her a baby or two. This was surreal. Cassie hadn't given children this much thought her entire adult life. Then, all of a sudden, she holds a cute infant, and now her biological clock is trying to make up for lost time. They walked down one of the hallways facing the gardens and were about to bypass a group of men when Jerry stopped and turned to face them. Talon Arctos, is that you? Cassie glanced at the man in question. He was huge. Fuck huge. He was massive, with a face she couldn't look away from. Deep-set eyes that zeroed in on her, but it was his scruffy beard that gave her all kinds of dirty thoughts. It is, he said, his gaze still pinning Cassie to the spot. Holy cow, this guy was hot. The sound of his voice sent shivers rushing down her spine. His light brown shirt matched his eyes and gave his pale complexion a hint of color. I'm Jerry Wilder, she said. I knew your parents back when they led the Arctos clan. I remember meeting you when you were a kid. She laughed. I see your serious face hasn't changed. He finally glanced away from Cassie to meet Jerry's gaze. It's nice to meet you. I've heard you're a miracle worker. Jerry laughed. I don't like to brag, but yeah, I am. A smile finally broke through the thin line he'd formed his lips into and changed his features from broodingly sexy to, holy shit, this man is smoking hot. Hello, Jerry, said a man to Talon's right. I'm Vander Casval. I have also heard about your ability to match couples, including Alex and Bella. Jerry gasped. You're the warrior king from Galaxa, aren't you? Vander grinned. His green eyes lit with an internal energy. Yes, I am. He picked up her small pale hand and brought it up to the center of his chest. It is an honor to meet you. Cassie gaped. She'd never seen anyone say hello that way. It was so personal. All that touching freaked her out a little. Jerry didn't seem to mind. In fact, she appeared to be quite taken with the warrior. So nice to meet you. Jerry turned to Cassie and smiled. Vander, Talon, this is my assistant, Cassie. She's here with me to meet the babies. Cassie waved at both men, taking a step back, and not wanting anyone to grab her hand and put it on their very muscular-looking pecs. She might drool, and that wouldn't look good for her, or Jerry. Nice to meet you. 8. This has been quite a day. Jerry grinned at the men. Are you enjoying your visit, Vander? Vander glanced at Cassie with interest.
I am. Maybe we can discuss my use of your services.
Jerry frowned. My current services are normally for shifters, but I could probably start a secondary matchmaking service to service others like you, warriors that don't necessarily shift. She laughed. Otherworldly beings that need love too.
It would be an honor to speak with you at some point and discuss this.
Jerry nodded. I will definitely get back to you. Leave some communication details for me with Carell, and we'll chat once all this is over. Vander was just as hot as Talon, in a completely different way. Talon had a whole wild, scruffy look that she swore meant he'd tear a woman's clothes off and fuck her brainless without needing a bed. Vander, on the other hand, appeared to have the I'm going to fuck you senseless look down pat. Probably on the wall, or doggy style, or, oh my lord, what was she thinking? Being around them made Cassie feel like she needed to cover up. They were both staring holes into her powder blue dress. She cleared her throat and decided she had to get a drink before she melted into a puddle from the two men's stares. Jerry, she mumbled, I'm going to grab a drink. She turned and walked off before Jerry had a chance to say anything. Whew. She turned a corner and almost ran into one of the people walking around with a tray of drinks. They appeared to be champagne flutes, but with a different kind of liquid inside. What is it? She asked.
Sidai wine,
someone said behind her. She took the glass and turned. Talon, right? He nodded.
Are you unwell?
She brought the flute to her mouth and drank before replying. No, just getting used to the travel from Earth, even though we've been here close to 2 days. And the fact he was so good-looking. She gulped down the drink. It's kind of hot here. She didn't really like guys with those serious faces and eyes that appeared to look into the very depths of her soul. But here she was, daydreaming of Talon stripping down to his birthday suit and banging her like a screen door during a Category 5 hurricane.
You came from Earth just to attend the welcoming of the babies?
He seemed surprised she'd do that. I had nothing better to do, she mumbled. Her father and Victoria, gushing about their own baby, made the decision for her. She needed to go. She could barely find a man who didn't take her for a sucker, and then Victoria's news hit her hard. It shouldn't have, but it did. It made Cassie realize she didn't have her life in order. She wanted something worthwhile and special. Sure, she had a job with Jerry, but she had no decent relationship, or even a prospect of one. The worst part was the children. At 37, she'd always thought she'd have a family by then. Now she got to see her father start another family while she was still learning how to handle men. She felt like a loser, and so she'd chosen to get away instead of staying around and feeling worse for herself.
No mate?
He asked, taking a step closer and crowding her into the small corner she was in. Mate? You mean like a boyfriend? No, I don't have one. She gulped down another glass of the sweet wine and watched his eyes turn bright gold. Wow. Talk about sexy and mesmerizing.
A beautiful woman like you is someone every male here wants.
She chuckled at his words. Why? Because I'm curvy? He lifted a brow.
Your curves are part of what makes you desirable, yes, but it is more than that. I can see you have sass, and that is not easy to find.
Thanks. That's nice of you to say. She squeezed around him and returned to the hallway. Another man passed with a tray full of drinks. He took her empty glass and gave her a full one. She gulped down half of it in one shot. Her brain was still acting all kinds of unfocused. Though Talon was good-looking in a primal way, he had an air of possessiveness she didn't care for. Then again, with enough wine, she probably wouldn't give two shits. The man was hot, and he looked like the kind who would give her that fantastic sex she'd been hoping for. Bella happened to stop next to her at that moment. Hey, Cassie, she said, glancing around for something. "Do you mind holding Avery for a second? She dropped her headband somewhere, and it's some family heirloom, so I don't want to lose it." "Of course I don't mind," she said, almost ripping the baby out of Bella's arms and snuggling her to her chest. Avery made a little circle with her lips and kept her eyes closed in sleep. "I'll be back in a second. I'm just going to backtrack and see if I find it." "Take your time," she said, engrossed in the baby. A soft groan sounded, and Cassie glanced up to see a strange look on Talon's face.
"You like children?"
he asked. "It seems I'm in love with them at this stage in my life." She laughed and pouted at the baby. Who knew holding a baby would make my biological clock tick so loudly? It could be heard in another dimension. She rubbed her nose on the baby's fine brown hair and sniffed. She smelled like a baby still. Why was she surprised? It's not like Avery had aged in the last hour. Maybe if she begged, Bella might let her hold her later again. God, she wanted one so bad. 9. Talon watched Cassie snuggle baby Avery, and a desperate longing curled around his heart. His bear wanted her. She was the one, he argued. Seeing her hold the child did things to him. It made him want to take Cassie and mate with her. Watch her grow with his offspring and have the family his bear had been demanding for months. "I need to get a hold of myself," she groaned. "I've never had baby fever like this." He liked hearing that. Knowing that his future mate was just as ready to have children encouraged him. Corral rounded the corner and met Talon's gaze with a serious one of his own.
"Paxton is here."
Talon bit the curse on his tongue and took another look at Cassie holding the baby. The image filled his mind with ideas and hopes for the future. He wouldn't have ever thought visiting Alex would mean meeting his future mate.
"I'll see you shortly,"
he said to Cassie, who lifted her gaze from the baby and smiled. "See you later." She probably didn't realize how tempting and inviting her words sounded. He would see her later, and they would spend some time together. That night, he'd claim her. Talon didn't do waiting, and he didn't like to run in circles. He'd found the one, and he intended on taking her.
"Where is he?"
he asked Corral.
"He's in a private room."
Corral's voice was somber.
"A guarded room."
Talon frowned, slowing down on his steps.
"Why?" "He started raising his voice at Alex. Demanded Alex remove you from leading the Arctos clan."
Corral hissed quietly.
"What?"
he snapped. Paxton was known to act childish, but this was beyond stupid. Yelling at the king? They entered the guarded hallway. Talon wasted no time in rushing in and tossing his brother across the room to slam him against the brick wall.
"Are you out of your fucking mind?"
Paxton stood, brushing off the dust from the walls, and glared at Talon.
"I am sick and tired of you telling me what to do. You don't come here and tell the king to remove me as clan leader,"
he ground out, taking slow, menacing steps towards Paxton. Corral stood in the background, watching the two men circle each other.
"It needed to be said. You are ruining my life,"
Paxton whined. Talon's fury grew with every second he looked at his brother. He took a deep breath and turned to Corral.
"Where is Alex now?" "The ceremony to welcome the children will be starting soon. After that, he would speak with you."
Talon nodded and faced Paxton again.
"You are lucky you are still alive to say anything to Alex. He could have torn you apart for daring to order him around."
He curled his hands into fists.
"I won't allow you to insult Alex, his mate, and their children using the Arctos clan as cover."
Paxton's brows drew down into an angry frown.
"So, what are you going to do?" "For now, you'll stay here, locked in until I speak to Alex and we decide a punishment that fits your crime."
Paxton snorted in disdain.
"You can't keep me here."
Corral laughed dryly.
"We can and we will."
He met Paxton's glare with his own.
"Attempt to leave, and you will have the king himself to deal with, along with the rest of his army. I don't think you want that."
Talon left the room with Corell by his side. He watched Corell give instructions for the guards to ensure the young bear stayed put.
"I don't know what to do with him. He is testing the last of the patience I have,"
Talon told Corell on their way to the welcoming ceremony.
"Do you have siblings?"
Corell shook his head.
"No, I'm an only child, but my maid is carrying multiples. It's why she's home today. She wasn't feeling up to being surrounded by people." "Congratulations," he said. "And lucky you for not having a pain-in-the-ass brother trying to destroy the clan your family kept whole for generations." "No offense, but your brother seems to need his head bashed in."
He agreed with Corell, and if Paxton didn't change his ways, he would find Talon being the one to kick his ass. Talon watched the ceremony where all attendees welcomed the babies into the kingdom from the back of the massive ballroom that opened up to the garden. He walked down a corridor, searching for Cassie's scent in the crowd. He caught her on the other side, leaning against a brick wall. She gulped a glass of wine and handed the empty glass to someone passing by, who gave her a newly filled one. She wasn't speaking to anyone, just watching Bella hold one of the boys, Corell hold the other, and Alex hold Avery. There was a definite look of longing in her face. Knowing she wanted children brought out a primitive desire to see her full with his child. How had he ignored the calling to mate and breed for so long? His bear pushed at his skin and wanted out. He had no idea that meeting the woman he knew was the one for him would create such a stir in the animal. He needed to spend some time with Cassie and claim her. Tonight, she'd be his. 10. Cassie headed to the room she'd been assigned by Jerry. According to Bella, it had the prettiest view, and she'd love it come morning. "Cassie!" Jerry called out behind her. Cassie stopped and turned, watching Jerry in her pretty dress approach her, a curious look on her face. "I was just going to bed," Cassie told her. Why did her voice sound so thick? She knew they were going home the following evening, so she wanted to be prepared for the space travel thingy that made her stomach shoot up her throat. "I'm sorry we can't stay longer," Jerry said, strolling beside her. "I promised you it would be a short trip." She nodded. "It's okay. This place is beautiful, but I need to get back to putting your files in order, and you have people who want you to find them mates." Jerry laughed. "I know." "Hey, that guy." She started, but couldn't remember the name of the big alien warrior that had the sexy green eyes. "Vander?" "Yes." She turned to face Jerry with excitement. "He lives on a warrior planet?" Jerry nodded. "Yes, they're neighbors, but they came to pay their respects to Alex's daughter. Alex's father was friends with Vander's father, and they've kept up the communication between both leaders." "That's great. Did I hear someone right? They have issues with other planets?" Jerry sighed as they walked up a flight of stairs. "Yes, you heard right. Not every planet out there is as nice as this one, and even this one has shields in place for protection." "Shields? Wow, I thought this place was so quiet and everyone was so nice." Jerry tossed a blonde lock of hair behind her ear. "Aurora is a great place to live, but this galaxy is far from perfect. There are those that want to enslave others." "I should have known there are assholes all over," she grumbled. She'd just taken a step onto the landing of their floor when she heard other footsteps behind them. She and Jerry turned to see Talon coming up the stairs, a brooding look on his face. "Talon!" Jerry smiled. "I'm so glad you made it." The way she said it made Cassie think she'd asked him to come after them. "I'm heading up to my room, which is one level up, but maybe you do me the favor of walking Cassie to her room?" Cassie opened her mouth to tell them she didn't need an escort, but the hallway tilted for a second, so she shut her mouth and leaned back on the wall. He nodded and glanced at Cassie with a piercing gaze that warmed her to her toes.
I'll walk with her.
Jerry winked at Cassie and turned to go, but stopped and gave Cassie a smile. Remember that thing you wanted? Cassie glanced at Jerry's face for a moment before it dawned on her what she was talking about. Heat crowded her cheeks, and she was sure her face was flaming red. Yes, I've done my part. She waved them off. Have a good night. Cassie's jaw dropped as she watched Jerry turn and head down. Jerry had set up some hot sex for Cassie. She blinked at Talon. His gaze roamed her face with so much lust it made the decision easy for her. Tonight, she'd take whatever came from the big, sexy shifter. Tomorrow, she had to go home, but at least she'd have the memory of what a real, wild night of sex truly was. She cleared her throat and started walking. So, Talon, what type of shifter are you? He was quiet a moment before finally replying,
Bear.
Oh, a bear. They're so cute and cuddly, she remarked with a grin. Damn, she'd had a lot of wine. Now she sounded like an idiot. He frowned, and his lips curved into a grin.
I think you have my kind confused with the stuffed version.
What do you mean? They were steps from her door, but she didn't want to get there, so she slowed. She liked listening to his raspy voice when he spoke.
Bears are big and dangerous. There's nothing cuddly about them.
She snorted a giggle and sighed. I have a collection of teddy bears from my childhood. You will not get me to believe bears aren't cuddly. The door to her room was at her back. She stopped and turned to look at him. There was a dark, hungry look in his eyes.
Bears are hunters. We stalk.
He took a step toward her, the movement making her press her back to the door.
We capture our prey,
he said, pushing against her. She was stuck between him and the wood at her back. Is that all? She mumbled. She could have told him to back off, but she wanted to see where he went with this. The attraction she felt for him short-circuited her brain cells and left her panting for a touch of his lips, a graze of his fingers, and visualizing things so dirty he might have her bleach her brain if he knew. A bright golden glow lit in his eyes. The change in his face was instant. It went from sexy to downright dangerous.
You want more?
She bit her lip, gulping at the nerves in the back of her throat. He placed a palm to either side of her head, effectively caging her in. Doesn't sound too dangerous to me. Her voice was low and husky. There was no warning after that. His head came down, crashing his lips to hers, and using her gasp to plunge his tongue into her mouth. There was no finesse to his kiss. It was wild and untamed, and exactly what she needed in her life. He drove deep, savoring every crevice of her mouth. He curled his tongue possessively over hers. It was clear. He was the hunter, and she was his quarry. In the distance, she heard the door to her room open and was lifted off her feet for a moment. She took the time to curl her arms around his neck and take the kiss deeper. His low groan traveled through their kiss to make her belly vibrate. Then she was on her back on the bed, with Talon pressed to her body. He cupped her face, rocking his hips into the juncture of her thighs. Lord, that felt amazing. She couldn't even voice how wonderful his rocking was for her. Instead, she focused on the strained breathing filling her mind. Oh, and how slick she'd gotten from the feel of his erection pressing at her pussy through her thin dress. There was a not-so-gentle tug, and her breasts came loose from the strapless dress. He nibbled her lips, sucking and licking and trailing his tongue down her neck to the valley of her breasts. Then he took a hardened nipple into his mouth and sent electricity shooting to her clit. Every suck felt like a new shockwave of fire jetting through her body. Oh, Talon, she mumbled, her throat dry as sandpaper and raking her nails through his hair. She gripped the strands and pushed her tit further into his mouth. God, that feels so good. She squealed at the feel of his hands roaming up her thigh, the dress bunched at her waist. He slid a hand over her satin-covered crotch, and she moaned. He let go of her nipple, glanced at her eyes, and slowly moved south. I can't wait. I need to taste your sleek, hot pussy with my tongue. I have to fuck you, take you every way possible, and stamp myself on your body. She had no idea what he was talking about, but holy shit, that sounded good to her. Stamping himself all over her body. No man had ever uttered those words to her. "11. Talon," she trailed off in a rushed breath when he tugged at her panties and slid his fingers over her wet heat. It was a delicate little glide of his digits over her clit, but enough to make her jump in her skin. God, yes! That's all I need to hear. He shoved her panties down her legs, not bothering to remove her shoes. These shoes have given me some very interesting images of you with only them on. He gave a rough rumble and kissed her inner thigh. Real sexy. He pushed her legs wide, lifting each of her large thighs over his muscled shoulders and putting his face by her pussy. She gave a throaty chuckle at the way he talked about her shoes. At least he didn't have a foot fetish. She gasped the moment his lips brushed over the heart of her need. Oh my... She tightened her hold on his hair, tugging his strands and lifting her ass closer to his face involuntarily. He did a slow circle over her clit with his tongue, dancing it over her entrance to her aching pleasure center. A low, raspy moan left her throat. He licked up and down her clit with sure strokes that had her groaning for more. Heat expanded in her belly to the point she thought she'd internally combust. With every lick over her pussy, he gave another sound over her taste. It was dirty and sexy, and damn, did she love it. Her muscles tightened, and before she got a chance to take a breath, the tension in her belly snapped so fast it left her gasping. Her back bowed off the bed. Her legs clenched around his head, and everything but the amazing feeling rushing through her was forgotten. Pleasure cascaded in waves over her overheated senses. There wasn't a chance to melt into the bed. He tugged her down until she was sitting up on the edge, kissing him and tasting herself on his lips. Something primal and desperate took hold of her. She didn't know what, but suddenly all she could think of was him, taking her in every way possible. She curled her tongue over his and moaned at every thrust into her mouth. His fingers played with her slick pussy, going in and out. Every other second, he'd press one over her clit, and she'd groan into the kiss. He pulled back from her, meeting her gaze and showing her the wild need in his eyes. Be mine, he said in a low rumble that made her clit twitch. Let me please you and worship your body. Shit, with talk like that, she'd let him do her any way he wanted. Talent, shh. He placed a finger slick with her wetness over her lips. She let the dirty girl inside her take control and sucked it into her mouth. He inhaled hard and clenched his jaw as if having a hard time controlling himself. Fuck me, Talon, she whispered, pulling back. He leaned forward, sucking her lip between his teeth and biting down. I'm going to do more than fuck you. I'm going to mark you. I'm going to stuff you full of my cock. He held her captive with his hungry gaze. I'm going to fuck you, feel your pussy clench around me, and when you come apart, I'm going to fill you with my seed. He licked the corner of her mouth. Then your sexy ass is going to be mine, all mine, and by the end of the night, you'll be leaking my cum from every hole on your body. Holy fuck. That was way dirtier than she expected. Have you been fucked in the ass, beautiful Cassie? She gulped and shook her head,
Good. Tonight, you're mine. All mine.
She gave a quick nod, and in the blink of an eye found herself on her knees on the edge of the bed, her upper body pressed down on the mattress and her ass high in the air. He kissed his way down her back, sending shivers racing to her core. Her head dropped on the soft bedding, and it was then she noticed the room had turned a dark blue with stars, mimicking the galaxy. The little stars gave off enough soft light to allow her to see. The sheets had changed color as well, to a swirly black and silver. It was like having sex outdoors while staring at the stars. He spread her ass cheeks wide and licked between, curling his tongue in circles over her tiny dark hole. Warmth spread over her belly, and moisture dripped from her slit. "Oh, God!" The bedding muffled her moans.
"Ah, baby,"
he grunted, with another lick up and down her ass.
"I know you like that."
He slipped the tip of his tongue into her hole, and she squirmed. Her pussy ached and need.
"You are such a fucking sexy, dirty girl."
Yes, she was, and she just now realized it. Took a hot-as-fuck bear and his tongue to let her know she was into this. She pushed her ass into his mouth, searching for him to pierce her. Another explosion of warmth took over her core. She clenched the sheets in her grasp. Her pussy tightened around nothing. God, she wanted to be fucked by him more than anything. He pulled back, leaving her desperate for more. Then he was there again, the head of his cock rubbing at her swollen folds, pushing into her aching pussy. He drove deep, filling her in a single-minded thrust. There was no stopping. He pulled back and did it again. With every drive into her, he pushed her further up the bed, and the hands around her hips rammed her right back toward his dick. There were no words to describe how he felt inside her. It was an overwhelming sense of being filled to the brim.
"You're so slick and warm around my cock, so tight,"
he grunted. She could only hold on, whimper, and feel her heart ready to burst with each breath she took. He slipped a hand around her sweat-slick thigh and pressed at her clit with his fingers. She saw stars. He gripped her left hip hard with his other hand, so hard it was as if his fingers were digging into her flesh and cutting into her.
"Grip me. Suck my cock hard with your tight little pussy. Do it."
He squeezed at her hip, and pain burned at the area he held her.
"Oh, my beautiful. I feel your pussy quivering. You want to come. Do it. Let yourself go. Take me with you."
The world narrowed to only their harsh breathing and the sound of skin slapping. The tension at her core dispersed in a heartbeat. Explosions rocked her as waves of pleasure consumed her from head to toe. She clung to the bed, her body shivering and her pussy grasping tightly at his cock. With every breath came another shudder and mini aftershock, and then he plunged into her one final time, held still, and grunted loudly as he filled her with his seed. She swore he amped up the fire in her channel with his cum. Another orgasm tore her apart while he continued to come inside her. His nails dug into her hip and inner thigh. She didn't know how long it took her to come back to reality, but he wasn't done. Not even with the fact she was leaking his cum and it dripped down her legs. Nope. The sexy-as-fuck bear pushed a wet finger into her ass and sent her need soaring all over again. "Talon," she said hoarsely, "what are you doing?"
"Taking what you already gave me."
12. A second finger worked its way into her ass. He pumped in and out of her hole slowly at first, but using her pussy slickness as lubrication. Still deep in her, he worked his fingers, widening them and adding a third when she started to moan and rock back into him. She reached down between her legs, working her already hard clit with slow circles. A soft shiver raced down her spine.
"That's my girl. Take my fingers and my cock at the same time,"
he mumbled,
I can't wait much longer, Cassie. I want in your delectable ass.
She never had a man in there, but the way he was turning her on with each glide of his fingers made her impatient to know what else he had planned. I have lube, she said. She was sure they needed it, and the last thing she wanted was for him to go up her ass with his big dick and no lube. That could kill the fun out of their night.
Where?
She glanced around, trying to situate her travel bag, and saw it on top of a table. There, in the front pocket. Clear bottle. He moved so fast, she almost couldn't believe he was gone and back before she got a chance to lay her head on the mattress. He squeezed cool liquid between her cheeks, letting it slide down her ass and working it into her hole. Oh, God, that feels fucking amazing, she gasped. He continued to work the lube into her ass with his fingers and slowly pumped in and out of her pussy with his cock. The dual penetration heightened her senses and drove her wild with need. She wiggled and rocked, wanting to deepen penetration on both levels.
You want more, my beautiful? Want my cock deep in your ass? Spilling my cum there, too? Taking you deep and hard?
Yes. God, yes. His fingers came out of her ass, and then his cock was there, pushing into her. He didn't stop or wait. He worked himself in with soft back-and-forth motions until he was balls deep, until she could barely breathe and felt like her lungs were on fire from air deprivation.
Now,
he grunted in an animalistic tone.
I'm going to fuck your tight ass and watch my seed spill from there, too. Then you'll be mine.
She'd stopped listening to most of what he said. She agreed to be his for the night. Nothing, not even the end of her time in Aurora, would stop them from finishing this night with everything and anything he wanted to try. He propelled back, almost pulling out of her, and then slammed deep. She winced once and worked her clit again with her fingers. His cum and her wetness trailed down her thighs. It was so dirty and erotic. She'd never done anything like this. Another deep drive, and he sped up. In. Out. With every plunge, she'd swear he was trying to reach a place inside her she didn't know existed. Her muscles started to tense again. The impending orgasm made her fingers shake and her body curl tighter. He dug his right hand on her hip and leaned forward, reached up her belly until he got a hold of her left nipple and squeezed. Fire raced across her skin. Her blood turned to lava, and a burst of heat shot from her belly to her limbs. She screamed a hoarse cry into the bedding. Her ass gripped at his cock tightly with the force of her climax. He roared a loud huff and drove his pulsing cock into her ass a final time, pressing his pelvis as far as he could on her ass. Jets of warm semen filled her ass. He pumped continuously until his cum trailed down her cheeks to her thighs. He pulled out of her and left her wondering where the hell he got his energy from. She could barely move. She lay limp on the bed, her body still shaking for the multiple orgasm and cum coming out of both holes. It was a matter of seconds before he was back and wiping her down with a wet, warm, soft cloth. She couldn't say anything. Her brain had stopped working, and frankly, anything at that point would only mess up the night. Instead, she let him curl up beside her and hold her to his side. He pushed her clumps of sweaty hair off her face and kissed her. That tender moment did things she hadn't expected. It opened up her heart to ideas she shouldn't be having with this shifter. Not that it mattered. She was already getting ideas. Best to sleep the sex haze away before she did something stupid, like propose to the guy and offer to have his babies. Not in this galaxy. 13. Talon glanced at his communicator and frowned. Alex was trying to get a hold of him. Cassie slept with a hand out to where he'd been. She was so sweet, so sexy. He couldn't wait until he moved her into his cabin and showed her off to his clan. First, he needed to speak to Alex and deal with his brother. Alex had always been a friend, and he'd probably want to know what in the world was wrong with Paxton. He would return to see his mate later, when things weren't so crazy and she was awake. He hated leaving her after claiming her, but he had duties that didn't go away just because he found his mate. He darted down the stairs and through a maze of hallways to the ground level where Paxton was being held. He rushed inside, but only saw Carell and Alex.
"Where's Paxton?"
Talon growled, angry that his brother was still causing trouble for him. At a time he should be getting to know his mate, he had to be here, trying to figure out what his shit-for-brains brother had said or done to offend the Lion King.
"He's gone,"
Carell replied. Talon didn't miss the angry tone, nor the way Carell glared at the open window.
"I thought he was being guarded,"
Alex asked.
"He was. The guards outside the window were overpowered 3-1.
Carell told them.
In the time it took for the guards to rush the attackers away and return to their post, he'd gotten out."
Alex's eyes blazed gold.
"I want him found,"
he roared. Talon did his own growling.
"I will find him. I will deal with him."
Alex gave a short nod.
"If he comes back this way, I can't promise we will not deal with him ourselves, Talon. He has insulted my family on a day most wouldn't dare, and he's starting trouble in your clan."
Talon knew Alex was right. He had to put an end to Paxton and the shit he was stirring up for his people.
"I will take care of him. You have my word. Anything you need, it's at your disposal,"
Alex said, and turned to Carell.
"I'm going to Bella and the children. Get him transport."
"You got it," Carell said, and watched Alex leave the room before turning to Talon.
"Do you want me to go hunting with you, or will you go straight home? I know my brother. He won't stick around here. He'll have gone home to his friends, his backup."
Talon took a deep breath, releasing some of the rage his bear felt by curling and uncurling his fingers into fists.
"I'm going, but I'll be back. I have unfinished business here."
Talon clicked a button on his communicator.
"Dylan,"
he said, watching his friend pop up on the screen.
"What's going on? How's everything?" "Not good. We need to talk. Meet me at the clan offices." "Just give me a few minutes and I'll be there."
Dylan sounded like he'd been asleep, so Talon knew he'd probably get there before Dylan did. Talon transported to the hills his headquarters and clan offices were located, and found the buildings inside being torn apart by 3 younger bears he wasn't familiar with. He roared, finally allowing his bear to take control. The suns rose, bringing light into the dimly lit room. Talon dashed forward, knocking one of the young bears off his feet and clawing at the guy in the chest. His brown fur immediately matted with blood from the gash Talon cut across his chest. He recognized their scents. They were friends of his brother, younger clan members spending more time with Paxton, listening to his brother's nonsense. Now he had no idea what had gotten into them.
"You can't win,"
one of the bears communicated through their animal link. Talon was pushed from behind, bringing him down and breaking a very large and heavy table his father built many years ago. Talon roared and got back on his feet, shaking off the wood clinging to his fur. He climbed over the nearest guy, clawing and biting at the kid's claws. Unlike Talon's paws, over a foot wide with claws 5 inches long, the kid had small claws. That meant he had to work twice as hard to hurt Talon. Talon was bigger than all 3 combined. His bear stood at almost 8 feet tall and weighed in at almost 2,500 pounds. He pushed the younger bear with the weight of his body and knocked him against the wall.
"Talon!"
he heard Dylan yell from across the torn-up room. The bear hit hard, his face slapping against the wall and a massive cracking sound. Blood splattered all over. The body slid down the wall, leaving a bloody trail as it went. His bear fell into an unconscious pile on the ground. Talon didn't have time to worry about the kid or if he was dead. They knew the rules when they went against their leader: kill or be killed. A massive growl erupted in the room, and Dylan's bear joined in, picking up one of the kids and tossing him against the big window. Glass shattered, and the bear Dylan tossed rolled into the forest. Dylan rushed after him, picking him up and clawing at his face and chest. The kid tried to shove away, running backwards and hitting a large tree. Talon was scratched on his back by the third guy. He shook him off, picking up the kid by the throat and roaring. His bear wouldn't be controlled any longer. Paxton had started the kind of trouble Talon's father had warned him about. He told him he'd need to establish his dominance and not let anyone destroy the close-knit clan, not even his brother. He continued squeezing the other bear's throat, ignoring the claws on his arms and chest and the way he tried to shake him off. Talon released the kid and watched him slump to the ground. He hoped that taught him not to mess with his leader. He turned to head to the forest, where he no longer saw Dylan and the other bear. Suddenly, someone was biting him on the arm, digging needle-sharp claws into the back of his neck. Talon roared in fury. He reached over his shoulder and managed to grasp a hold of the other bear's head. The anger burning inside him made the decision for him at this point. He wasn't giving the guy another chance. He tossed him in front of him and watched the guy stagger to his feet. Then he swung his massive arm, and the guy flew to the other side of the room from the hit. Bones cracked as his back hit a brick wall. He landed on Talon's desk, bloodying a lot of his work in progress. Talon didn't give a shit. He waited. The guy wobbled to his feet, and Talon dropped down on all fours, running as fast as possible and hitting the guy with the full weight of his bear. This time, the other bear went down hard. Talon curled his claws around the side of his neck, digging deep, and then pulled back, almost decapitating the guy and effectively ending his side of the fight. Movement from the corner of his eye had him turning quickly. Dylan stood at the broken glass entrance, his blue fur covered in patches of blood and his eyes glowing blue.
"Are you okay?"
Talon grunted. He needed a little while to deal with his injuries, but he'd be fine. Paxton had no idea what was coming to him. 14. Cassie woke with a wide grin. She stretched on the bed, then let her body go limp. She tingled all over and could sleep another 10 hours, but she needed to get ready to go. She never considered herself a one-night stand kind of girl, but if one was going to have a one-nighter, then one should do it with a man who could give her the orgasms Talon had. Her throat was raw from all the screaming she'd done. A nagging thought popped up in her mind. He'd grunted something in a language she didn't understand last night, and he scratched her. The man was an animal in bed. Literally. She wished she could consider a relationship with him, but she lived on another planet. Not to mention, the last thing she wanted him to think was that she had suddenly grown attached over great sex. Sweet flutters took hold of her heart, but she ignored them. She wasn't interested in long-term with Talon. Sure, he talked a good game, and the things he'd said had made her come like never before, but she needed stability in her life. She needed a man she could count on. Talon was sexy, but that's all she knew about him. He could be a total womanizer. Though her heart disagreed with that, she reminded herself she'd made mistakes choosing a man in the past. Still, it would be wonderful to finally have a man ready to love her, to cherish her as she was, to give her attention and show her how much she was wanted for once in her life. Perhaps she shouldn't close off the idea of seeing Talon again. Who knew if he was returning to say goodbye? She held on to the thought with a wide smile and hopeful heart. She was already doing what she promised not to, giving herself ideas about a man she barely knew. She got up, showered, and dressed, ready to say goodbye to Bella, Alex, and their babies. She would miss the beautiful, loving family and their amazing world. Her place was on Earth, working with Jerry and trying to set her finances on track. She carried her overnight bag with her down the hallway as a guy approached her. He passed, sniffing loudly, and then making a face like she stunk. She frowned and moved closer to the other wall, wondering what bothered him. Her thoughts were stopped short when someone grabbed her by the arm and turned her around. "Hey!" she screeched instinctively, pulling out of the guy's grasp. The man was big, with long brown hair and angry hazel eyes.
"He might have fucked you, but he'd never want a weak little human for a mate."
She gasped, wondering what this jerk was talking about. Then she realized the guy was referring to Talon.
"Who are you?" "It doesn't matter. Save yourself some shame and go back to your little world, human. Talon isn't for you. He's already got a mate. He wanted you to know."
She gasped at the venom in the guy's voice. Talk about angry and hurtful. She had no thoughts about wanting Talon long term. No way. No, just no. Ah, fuck. Maybe in the time she'd showered and dressed, she kind of imagined he might have liked her enough to ask her to come back and visit. But this guy killed every thought of that. What do you mean he's made it? She knew that word well from speaking with Massimo.
Made it, as in, he belongs to another. Someone worthy of his status as leader. You are not good enough for him. He left, so he won't have to explain this to you himself. So I am here.
Shifters used the word mated like humans used married. If Talon was married, that would explain his not being there when she woke up, or the lack of messages. She drew her brows down as her anger rose. I don't want your friend, and he didn't need to send you to let me down easy. I'm a big girl. I can take care of myself. She started marching away, fury building to the point she saw red. By the time she reached Jerry, she was glad to leave the planet. One good night of sex had been sent to hell. Why had Talon not left enough alone? He had to send a jerk to make sure she knew she'd been nothing but a booty call. What an asshole. Cassie's alarm clock rang in her ear. She cracked one eye open and then flipped onto her back. She was exhausted. 2 days of being in bed had done nothing for her. She had been so tired, she called in sick, telling Jerry she thought the travel had been tougher on her than she'd realized. Her cell phone rang and she groaned. She tossed a hand at the bedside table and grabbed her cell phone, squinting at the too bright screen. Ivy, she mumbled, pressing the answer button. Ivy, what's up? You sound like death, Cassie. What's going on? There was worry in Ivy's voice, and if she weren't so exhausted, she might try to pacify her cousin. As it was, she had a hard enough time keeping her eyes open. I'm sick. I think I caught something during my travel with Jerry. She could barely get the words out. Her throat felt sandpaper dry. I'm in town. Uncle Ricardo wondered if you were okay since you're not answering his calls. He's worried about you. Ivy snorted. Enough that he sent me in the jet to check on you. Ivy mumbled something and told someone who Cassie assumed was the driver to take her to Cassie's place. I'll be there soon. I'm going to take care of you. Sleep. I got the keys to get in your place, Ivy said. Thanks. Bring food. I'm famished. Ivy laughed and hung up. 15. The next time Cassie woke was to the growling of her stomach and the need to go to the bathroom. She sat up groggily and pushed the tangled mass of hair away from her face. She could hear Ivy in the kitchen, walking around and talking to someone else. I've checked her temperature, Ivy said. She doesn't have a fever, but she's very pale.
What do you think is wrong?
Ivan asked. Cassie frowned. She didn't realize Ivan had come along with Ivy. I don't know. She's been running herself ragged with working and stressing her negative bank account. She's probably got low iron or something and is feeling the effects of all this now. Cassie nodded. That was true and very possible. Perhaps she was just anemic and needed to get some vitamins. Easily fixed.
This isn't like her. She's always been very strong,
Ivan stated with a hint of frustration.
I don't like knowing she's sick. Not this sick. I've got business to attend to, but Massimo and I will be in town in a few days. If she gets worse, let me know and we'll come up sooner.
I will take care of her. I'm sure if she rests, she will be fine. Not thinking of work or her bank account might do her some good, Ivy told him. Now let me get back to cooking. Ivan laughed.
You cooked?
What's so funny? I know how.
You'd rather survive on takeout than to actually do it, he said. She must be really sick.
I made her chicken soup. I figured it's the safest thing. Plus, if she's got some kind of cold or virus, this won't hit her stomach as hard. Cassie made a face. What she really wanted was a steak. A nice, juicy steak and homemade rolls. Maybe mashed potatoes and cornbread. Oh, and pie. Apple pie. And biscuits. Yeah, biscuits drizzled in honey. Wait, what? Honey? She wasn't a honey eater, but the idea of honey sounded so good she couldn't ignore it. She picked up the phone and opened her delivery app to order takeout. A local restaurant made whatever she wanted as long as she paid the extra fee for delivery. She'd stopped using them recently, so she wouldn't spend money on things she didn't need, but she craved their food at that moment, and her stomach was in control. Having ordered her food, she slid out of bed and groaned at how tired she still felt. She went into the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Instead of looking sick, she looked great. What the hell? Her hair was shinier than usual, and her brown skin glowed. Even her eyes sparkled. She'd never been sick and looked this good. She wasn't sure if she should be worried or excited. She opted for a shower and more thoughts on the coming meal. Afterwards, she felt refreshed and much more awake. Her stomach still grumbled, but at least some of her energy appeared to have returned. "Are you out of the shower?" she heard Ivy yell from the living room. "Yes, I'll be there in a second." "Good. I went down to the pharmacy at the corner and got you some vitamins." She towel-dried her hair and slipped on pajamas. "Thanks." Ivy sat on a flowery blue sofa. It was Cassie's favorite, and her seat of choice when she was lying in the living room surfing the internet. "You ordered food," Ivy said accusingly. "I made you homemade soup." She smiled at the perfectly laid-out food on the coffee table, taking up every inch of space. "I'm sorry, Ivy. I'm starving. I think some red meat might help if my iron is low." Ivy gasped, her brown eyes going wide. "I didn't think of that." She sat up suddenly and picked up a bottle lying next to her on the sofa, popped it open, and handed Cassie 2 pills. "Here's some vitamins. This should help you in the coming days to get your energy levels back up." She sniffed the pills. Are they supposed to smell so strong? "Strong how?" Ivy asked, and brought the bottle to her nose. "I guess. It's a multivitamin. Those things smell a bit." Cassie wrinkled her nose. "This one is powerful." "Oh, for God's sakes, Cassie. Take the damn pills, and let's get you back to being your usual stressed-out self." Ivy winked and picked up a glass of iced tea. Cassie dropped the pills in her mouth and took the tea from Ivy before she got a chance to drink it herself. Then she turned to the food and started putting meat and biscuits on a paper plate. "This smells so good." "I don't know how you managed to get that little restaurant to make these things," Ivy mumbled, shoving a buttered biscuit into her mouth. "Before I broke up with asshole, who shall never be named, I ordered out all the time," she said with nostalgia. That was back when her finances were in order and she could do whatever she wanted with her money. Now she had to carefully work her way back to that cushion and healthy account of the past. Every time she thought about it, she wanted to kick her own ass for being so gullible. "So, how was that trip?" Ivy's eyes lit with curiosity. Cassie hadn't told her about where she was going, just that she had somewhere to go. Though Ivy and Ivan were friends with a shifter, she didn't know what Massimo knew of the other world, and wasn't sure it was okay to discuss with anyone. The trip was okay. She drizzled honey on a still warm biscuit and took a bite. Her stomach sighed in happiness. This was what she'd been dying for. Now she didn't feel so bad she'd ordered a dozen biscuits when she never ate more than 2. The first one was gone within a second. She went through the same process with another and glanced up to see Ivy's brows high. "What? A little hungry, are we?" She grinned. "I barely ate the entire time I was gone, so I guess this is my body's way of making up." At least she hoped it was, or she had more weight problems to consider. Ivy nodded in agreement. "You're probably right. Plus, you barely ate when you were at your dad's house. I noticed, but didn't want to say anything." Her appetite had gone to hell for the duration of the trip. Victoria played the pregnant woman in need of pampering card well, and she wasn't even showing yet. Apparently, she was like 1 month along or something. Victoria just gets to me sometimes, she admitted. She's so spoiled, which is strange because my father always taught me not to be that way. When she does her whole, I need someone to carry my handbag bit, it grates on me. Ivy frowned and continued eating. I don't know why. Your dad has been with her for a few years now. She's not a complete jerk, just a pampered woman used to being treated like a princess. If your dad didn't cater to her bullshit, she wouldn't be the way she is. That was true. Her father had been the one indulging Victoria like she couldn't do a thing on her own. I'm still surprised over that. Why? Ivy asked. What do you mean, why? My dad never did that with me. He made me take care of myself at all times. "16. Yes, and that taught you to be a strong woman. But maybe, and this is just my own fucked up opinion, which might be totally off mark, he doesn't want to do that with his wife. Maybe he loves her to the point he just wants to treat her like his queen and give her everything." She hadn't thought of that. It was a very definite possibility that her father just wanted to pamper his wife, give her everything he felt she not only was used to, but deserved out of love. Are you going to tell me about your trip and stop deviating? Did you meet any interesting people? Ivy widened her eyes. She stopped the forkful of mashed potatoes by her lips. Cassandra Liz Grimaldi, you better tell me what that stands for. I met a guy, she found herself saying. She hadn't wanted to think of Talon, but her body was still buzzing from their night together. If she didn't know better, she'd swear he stamped himself inside her like he claimed he would. Who? Where? Tell me everything! Ivy's words tripped over each other in her excitement. His name is Talon. Talon Arctos. Wow, that's such a strong and sexy name. Where the hell were you? Europe? She ignored the question and continued the story. We had a night I can't even describe. The things he did, the things he said, the way he touched me. Oh God, the way he touched her. Cassie, this is good, Ivy squealed. You met someone who got your mind off dick face. This is truly amazing, and you sound like he worked some magic on you in more ways than one. All that in 3 weeks. Cassie blinked out of her memories and glanced at Ivy. 3 weeks? We were gone 3 weeks? That couldn't be possible. They'd been in Aurora for exactly 3 days. How in the world had 3 weeks gone by without her noticing? Yep, 3 weeks. Well, almost 4 to be exact, but who's counting? Ivy laughed. She hadn't realized there was such a huge time lapse between both planets. Did I hear you talking to Ivan earlier? Ivy nodded. Yeah, on the phone. He's worried about you, but now that I look at you in the light, I see my initial assessment is probably right. You must be exhausted because, otherwise, you look great. Not sick at all. She snorted and drowned another biscuit in honey. At this point, she wasn't bothering with any of the other sides. She wasn't even going to think about how many she had eaten so far. Thanks. He sounded so clear, though. I thought he was here with you. Ivy frowned and wiped her mouth and hands. No, he was definitely on the phone. Must have been on speaker for Cassie to hear him from the bedroom. So, is he coming by? He's got a lot of work, but I think in a few weeks you can expect them to show up here wanting to see how you're doing. Ivy grinned and put the dirty napkin on the empty paper plate she'd used. I'll probably be up here with them. Awesome. We should all plan something fun to do. Something that would get her mind off Talon. Yeah. Okay, now can we go back to you and Talon? Ivy shifted in her seat to face her better. Cassie swallowed the last of the biscuit she'd been eating and sipped on her tea. What do you want to know? What? What does he look like? Will you talk to him again? And, more importantly, did he rock your world? He was dressed up for the event we were at, but underneath, I could tell he is the plaid shirt and beer kind of guy who works with his hands. He definitely worked those hands on her. No, we won't be seeing each other again. Not after he sent that other guy to let her down easy. And yes, he rocked my world. So hard. Ivy pouted. Why wouldn't you make an effort to see him again if he was so unforgettable? It's complicated. Light years complicated. What is this? A Facebook status? The man is married, is he? It was as good as. From what that guy said, he already has a mate picked out or something. I don't want to talk about it. We don't have to, Ivy said, her lips tipping down. I'm sorry. Let me clean this up and we can watch a movie. She nodded and leaned back on the sofa, her mind going back to Talon and his aggressive, dirty lovemaking. The memories assaulted her mind, and she felt herself get wet thinking of his face between her legs. This wasn't good. She needed to go back to work and distract herself from thoughts of the sexy shifter on a planet so far away it might as well not exist. 17. Talon waited in Alex's office, pacing the confines of the great library. He didn't know what to do. She'd left. Gone. Sure, it had taken him longer than expected to return after the fight in his offices, but he'd expected to return and find Cassie at the castle, visiting with Bella and the babies, not gone from the room he'd known she'd been staying at. Nobody answered his questions. The door to the library opened, and Bella marched in. Hi, Talon. I know we didn't get much chance to speak at the ceremony. It's nice to officially meet you. He nodded, watching her brow furrow as she spoke. This wasn't good. It's nice to meet you too. Is Alex not in? She shook her head. He had to take his mother home. He prefers to do it himself. His father has not been well, so it was important she go back and take care of him. He lifted a hand and scratched the back of his head, bringing it over his face and finally meeting her gaze again. Do you know where Cassie went? Bella stared at him for a quiet, tense moment and nodded. I do, but I don't think you're going to like what I'll say. Where is she? He asked, taking a step towards her and realizing he looked like a lunatic ready to shake the queen for information. She went home, she said, her gaze unwavering. To Earth. Shock froze him and rooted him to the spot. He didn't understand what she meant. Why would Cassie leave when he'd claimed her? He told her she was his. Fuck! He'd gone as far as brand her, mate her, and leave his mark on her. Why would she leave? Was there some kind of emergency? He asked, hoping maybe something had pulled her away, but she'd be back soon. Bella winced and shook her head. She sat on one of the chairs in Alex's office and motioned for him to sit as well. He dropped to a seat, his body cold from shock. No emergency. She and Jerry came for only 3 days. It was meant to be a short trip, Bella told him. You look like you're going to be sick. I don't understand. She's mine. She can't leave. The bear pushed under his skin, looking for a release and wanting to tear the castle down. Bella widened her eyes and leaned forward. Calm down, Talon. You don't understand Earth women. You can't just tell them they're yours. He glared at her, angry she was going against what he was saying. She is mine. She rolled her eyes and grinned. You can say that all you want, but the fact remains you don't own her. She's free to go, and she did. I claimed her. Her brows flew up. Did you tell her this? He frowned. What do you mean? She groaned and dropped her face on her hands, shaking it from side to side. Then she met his gaze. You're saying she's your mate, right? He nodded, annoyed he had to repeat himself. Of course Cassie was his mate. She'd been the one from the first whiff he got of her scent. From the moment their gazes met and his bear roared to sink his claws into her smooth caramel flesh. The only one. Look, you have to talk to her. She probably doesn't understand that you claimed her. Hell, she probably doesn't get that you mated her because you didn't bother to ask her if it was okay, Bella said with a bite to her voice. No offense, But you should always ask a woman if she wants to be your mate. You shouldn't take the decision out of her hands. What you did was not right.
She's my mate.
It doesn't matter. She should be allowed to say yes or no to any proposition you have. For a human, mating is like marriage, and one does not just marry a woman without asking her. You propose, and when she accepts, you get married or mated in your case. She pursed her lips and twined her fingers together, her large canary diamond glinting against the chandelier light.
So I am to get her? Bring her back?
Whoa there, buddy. Bella raised a hand. You can't force her back. She has to want to come back. He didn't understand any of this. Cassie was his mate. He claimed her. They belonged to each other. They belonged together. How could she not see that?
I have to bring her back, he said matter-of-factly. She's mine.
Bella sighed. You still don't get it, do you? She's not your property. She's a woman with her own thoughts and opinions, and you can't just tell her she's coming with you like she's a bag of laundry.
A what?
Never mind, she muttered. I'm trying to save you some heartache and possible physical injury here. If you're going to see her, you have to take it nice and slow and make sure you're both on the same page. She wouldn't have left if she thought you wanted something permanent. She got a distant look on her face. Come to think of it, she seemed to be in a rush to go home. She met his gaze. Are you sure you didn't do something to piss her off?
No, I left her to handle clan business. I was coming back.
It's been 4 days. She said the words like he'd committed a crime.
There was a problem with the clan. I had to handle it and sleep through injuries I suffered in order to heal.
She nodded. Okay. I say you should call Jerry before showing up on Earth and getting told off for being there to begin with. She scrunched her face in distaste. What if you were a booty call?
A what?
He frowned. You know, a good time. She waggled her brows. Maybe she only, wanted sex. Have you considered that? He broke into a grin, thinking Bella must be joking. The smile died on his lips when she continued staring at him like that was an actual possibility. His mate. Use him for sexual pleasure? It made no sense.
What do you mean, just sex?
Hey, women are not the only ones who are used for sex. What if Cassie didn't want a mate? Have you considered that? Of course not. That was crazy.
Everyone wants a mate.
Not on Earth. Not everyone. We're raised differently there. And if you've had bad experiences with the opposite sex, sometimes you prefer to keep it on the sex level and not get emotionally attached.
This is crazy talk, he grumbled and stood. I'm going to get my mate. She's coming home with me.
Bella shook her head. Good luck, Talon. You're going to need it. 18. Cassie heard her phone ring at the same time she exited her car to head into her doctor's office. She hadn't made an appointment, but they were usually really good about seeing her last minute. She'd been fighting fatigue for the past 2 weeks. Ivy had called and annoyed her enough times about going to the doctor that she'd given in and left Jerry's early in order to make the doctor's office before they closed. Since they'd been back from Aurora, Jerry had gone off to visit a sick friend for the past few weeks, so she'd been working at Jerry's on her own. She glanced at the screen. Massimo. She'd been chatting with him online randomly. Though he still flirted with her, he didn't try to push the issue. She felt a little guilty, since her main desire to speak to him was to find out more about shifters. She was thirsty for knowledge and couldn't stop thinking about Talon. Hi, Massimo. How are you?
Cassie, I'm good. I understand you're still not well.
She heard concern in his voice and smiled. He really was a nice guy. Too bad she had zero desire to go out with him. I'm fine. It's just overwork and stress. How are you?
Good, good. Ivan was supposed to come into town with me, but he's being held up at his office down south, so I will be there in a few hours, and wonder if you'd like to meet up for dinner.
She bit her lip. She should reject the idea, but he was nice. and he could be her friend. Heck, he was Ivy's friend, and they had nothing going. Sure.
Great. Shall I come by your place to get you?
No, meet me at my job, she said, and gave him the building address. I have to go through the mail after my doctor's appointment, so it's easier to meet up there.
Okay. I will see you soon then. Take care.
She hung up and entered the building, her gaze scanning the usually empty office. It was packed. What the hell were they doing? Giving free exams? The receptionist gave her an apologetic look. Hi, Cassie. She glanced at her computer screen and frowned. I don't have you in for an appointment today. Cassie leaned forward to speak over the open glass window into her reception desk so others wouldn't hear. I haven't been feeling very well, and I went through the medical self-diagnosis sites online, and I either have lupus, mono, some Brazilian bug, or anemia. I prefer to think it's the latter, though anxiety was in the list too. The receptionist, who happened to be her doctor's wife, grinned through the visible exhaustion on her face. How many times do I have to tell you to stop looking on those websites and self-diagnosing? Cassie grinned. It's not my fault. The commercials are always saying to ask my doctor about different types of meds. How am I supposed to know which meds I need to ask about if I don't know what's wrong with me? That's what we're here for, Cassandra. We'll figure it out. She chuckled and wrote on a pad. Have a seat, she whispered. I'll squeeze you in, but don't say anything. I swear it's a full moon tonight with all the craziness happening here. Thank you, Myra. She grabbed the only empty seat and pulled out her cell phone to text Ivy. She didn't want her cousin worrying about her any longer, so she let her know she was being checked out. 45 minutes later, she sat on an examination table, waiting for a nurse to come in. Hey, Cassie, said Tessa, one of the nurses. Myra filled Dr. Levi in on what you told her. She took Cassie's blood pressure and temperature. You seem to be running a bit of a fever. Dr. Levi walked in.
Hello, Cassandra. We are packed, so let's do some blood work and...
He stopped and frowned at the chart.
Let's do a pregnancy test, too.
Cassie frowned. Why? I'm on the pill. Dr. Levi gave her the look.
Because we never know what could be the cause of exhaustion, and pregnancy has those symptoms you've been talking about.
But I haven't... She stopped. Her face heated with embarrassment. She'd been on the pill since her youth to regulate her cycle, but other than abstinence, nothing was 100% effective. Dr. Levi gave her a warm smile.
I'm guessing you're rethinking that thought? Listen, let's do it anyway. Precaution and all that. I don't want to give you any medication without being sure nothing would harm you if you happen to be pregnant.
She stayed quiet, her mind counting back the days since her last period and trying to figure out if there was a chance at all of pregnancy. Her trip had been about a month ago, so she had no idea if that was a possibility. Her period wasn't due yet for a few days, but she definitely felt cranky and bloated, so that had to be a sign it was on its way. Damn it. 19. Callan returned to his cabin in a blind rage. How could the one woman who finally belonged with him leave? And Bella's reasons made no sense. A booty call. He slammed the door of his office opened. A few of the gathered clan members eyed him with surprise. Though he was never the happiest of bears, he never growled openly without reason. He had a reason, they just didn't know it. Men worked on putting the offices back together and fixing the broken walls and shattered glass and furniture. Dylan appeared from the glass exit that led to the forest, a deep frown creasing his brow.
We have a problem. Yeah, but what problem are you referring to?
Dylan cocked his head. He motioned for Talon to follow him outside. The two slipped past the working employees into the forest. There, a crowd of people had gathered.
My son,
one of the elder clan members, Jensen, started,
is dead. I need to know why.
A second clan member, Marita, had tears streaming down her face when she spoke. You killed my cub. He was so young. Why would you do that? Someone broke through the crowd and glared at Talon.
I know why. Lydorn, you don't know shit, Dylan snarled. Your son tried to kill me. The last thing I want to hear is that you are upset. Any of you.
He folded his arms over his chest.
You know the rules of our clan. Your kid's attacked. With no reason.
Merida and Jensen glanced at each other, then at Lydorn. Merida took a step forward.
Your brother is the cause of this. Why?
Talon roared so loud the trees around them shook.
He's been telling our boys they need to stand up to you, to push you out of the way, and that when he leads, they can have all the females they want. And you let them believe this?
Talon barked at the group. He scowled at them individually until they each glanced away from shame.
You know the pride I take in this clan. You knew I would try to live up to my father's expectations, and you let your children believe going against me was going to work? We didn't think they were serious,
Jensen replied. He curled an arm around a still crying Merida. The old man shook his head, sliding bloody fingers over his hair.
They talked about all kinds of things. You were one of the topics.
Already furious over his missing mate, Talon exploded.
Yes, I killed 2 of our members. I admit it. They attacked me in my office.
He turned to point at the building undergoing repairs.
You want proof? Go in there and look. But why kill them?
Lydorn yelled.
Why kill them? They were ours, our future. You know the rules.
Talon lowered his voice and glanced at Dylan.
We all know the rules. It's kill or be killed.
He met Merida's gaze. Though the man felt sympathy for her loss, the bear inside him felt justified in his actions.
Your son could have lived. I turned away. I gave him a chance to get out. But he came at me again. His intent was clear.
A broken sob sounded from her, and she buried her face in Jensen's neck. They were 2 of the older clan members. This could be serious. Talon might have worried more about their feelings if their kids hadn't tried to kill him. He might have had more sympathy if his need to recuperate hadn't allowed for Cassie to leave for Earth without him getting a chance to speak to her.
I demand a public trial.
Lydorn's words echoed around them.
A public trial is only available when someone is killed without justification.
Dylan took a step forward, always willing to put himself in front of Talon. Talon didn't need his help at that moment. He knew the rules. Hell, they'd been ingrained in his brain from birth.
Our cubs were killed without justification,
Lydorn continued. Some of the people around them started to back away. It was clear if they had been siding with him before, they weren't any longer.
Your spoiled kids came at us without reason,
Dylan growled.
Would you let someone attack you and not defend yourself?
Talon met Lydorn's gaze, his own unwavering. Lydorn's cold blue eyes filled with anger.
I want proof. Proof that my boy did what you are saying.
Dylan opened his mouth to say something. Talon sensed things were only going to get worse, so he tapped Dylan's arm and stopped him.
I refuse a public trial, but if it is evidence of what type of bad seed you raised, then you'll have it.
He glanced over his shoulder at one of the enforcers standing guard by the glass doors.
Get the recordings.
Merida's head came up from Jensen's neck. Her tear-stained face and trembling lip reminded Talon so much of his mother whenever she tried to get her husband to forgive Paxton for whatever he'd done to disrespect a guest or fellow clan member. Talon stood still. His gaze roamed the group, ensuring no one decided to start anything. As angry as he was, he could kill a few people and not think twice. He was like his father in a lot of ways. He never disrespected his people, and he didn't look to start a fight. But he wasn't standing by while someone decided he should be on trial for defending himself. That's not how Arctos clan worked, and it wasn't starting now.
Here you go,
said one of his enforcers, handing Dylan an electronic viewer. The small tablet gave a holographic image of everything their security system recorded. Talon had always felt his business place needed a system with multi-cameras to record each of the rooms in the headquarters, getting images of everything that went on at all times. Dylan pressed a few keys, and the holograms of the fighting turned to life-size. Everyone who stood around them was able to see the 3 kids attacking first Talon and then Dylan as well. The fight wasn't as long as it had felt while it was happening, but the silence afterwards was. People glanced around, none making eye contact with him. Merida stepped toward Talon and stopped. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize Paxton had gotten to him so much." Jensen nodded.
"We're just as shocked seeing this as we were to find out about the fight."
Lydorn turned away and marched into the trees without saying another word. The group dispersed, and soon just Talon and Dylan stood on the grassy hill. They turned to their left and approached the cliff overlooking the main cabin.
"What happened at Alex's? I thought you said you met someone."
Talon growled his unhappiness.
"She left. Cassie went back to Earth."
Dylan sucked in a shocked breath.
"That's odd. Did she not like it here? What went wrong?" "I don't know, but I need to get her."
He glanced at Dylan. The wind howled through the trees at their high altitude on the mountain. He hated having to leave when things were unstable, but the last thing he wanted was to lose any more time from getting Cassie back. Dylan gave a short nod, the kind that meant Talon could count on him to keep things running while he was gone.
"I'll oversee everything. Don't worry about it."
Dylan sat next to him to watch the sun set. Talon frowned at the distance. The various orange colors from both suns turned the skies into a glow of shades of yellow and gold.
"Bella said something she thought I could be. Something I'm not sure I like."
Dylan scratched at his beard. Like Talon, he shaved regularly, but being shifters meant hair grew quickly, facial or otherwise.
"What did she say?" "You're more familiar with Earth customs and sayings."
Dylan nodded.
"I've watched a lot of the up-to-date videos and tapped into their satellites to get better knowledge of the United States and its people." "What is a booty call?"
Dylan choked on his laughter. He started low, trying to keep the chuckles to a minimum, but then he appeared to be unable to control himself and laughed wholeheartedly. Loud.
"Bella said you were a booty call?"
"Yes." There was nothing amusing of being used for sex, if that's what she was implying. In Aurora, shifters mated or shared sex when in heat or for mutual pleasure. One was never used for it.
"That's rough."
Dylan cleared his throat, wiping at his eyes.
"Listen, she's probably wrong. You have to speak to Cassie. Only she can tell you why she left, and you might be able to convince her to come back."
Talon's gaze snapped up to Dylan's.
"Might? Earth women are not like ours. They have strange beliefs." "Like what?" "Like a male should ask them to mate, or one should spend time getting to know each other before you mate."
Dylan sounded as confused as Talon felt.
"Mating is natural. It just happens,"
he argued.
"We know this, but since humans don't read scents and don't have an animal guide, I guess that's why they need reassurance. And we get to know each other once we mate. That's the point of the mating getaway. Alone time."
He didn't get why humans did things backwards.
"I understand where you're coming from, but you have to play by their world's rules if you want her to come back with you."
Dylan shrugged.
"It could help her decide to return."
There was a lot to think about, but one thing he couldn't shake was his feeling that Cassie needed him and that she'd want to come back with him. He was sure of it. Dylan shuffled away, leaving him to think. He needed Jerry. The matchmaker could help him find Cassie. He pulled out the communicator and dialed a set of keys that would send a communication to Jerry. There was quiet, and a sudden hologram of Jerry appeared. "Talon Arctos," Jerry greeted warmly. "Nice to hear from you." There was a knowing grin on her face, as if she knew something he didn't.
"Jerry, I am headed to Earth. I will need your assistance."
She nodded. "Get here and we'll talk. I'll have someone bring you to my office. I'm headed there now, and we can discuss whatever you need in my home."
"Thank you."
"Hold your thanks. I think you have your work cut out for you." She closed the communication link before he had a chance to ask further questions. 20. Cassie had been left alone by both the doctor and the nurse. Her cell phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. Ivy. Instead of answering the text message, she chose to ignore it for now. She was too wound up over the idea of being pregnant. She really didn't think it was possible, but she couldn't be 100% sure. Tessa, the nurse, returned with a needle to get blood work. "So, I have some bad news." "Uh-oh. What's wrong?" "We're out of urine tests." She gave a nervous laugh that showed how exhausted she was. "That's okay. I'm probably not pregnant anyway." She wanted to believe that so much, but the flip-flopping of her stomach and the way her hand shook spoke otherwise. "Well, Dr. Levi says you need it, so we're going to give you a blood one instead. Our lab is open for another hour." She prepped Cassie's arm. "Those are better anyway, more accurate. And at the same time, we'll test your iron and see if you have any viruses going." She watched Tessa get her blood in quiet panic. Her breathing pounded loud in her ears. She couldn't be pregnant. She'd only had sex with Talon that one night, and while it had been multiple times, it hadn't even been a month yet. Before that, she hadn't been with her ex in at least 6 months. She'd been broken up with him for over a month before she went to Aurora. And even before that, he'd been ignoring all her attempts at being intimate. She'd been traveling, or he'd been traveling. When he was around, he didn't want to do anything with her. The bastard had been giving her excuses for not wanting to have sex for long months by saying he was tired or had to work late, when all along he'd been banging someone else. It just went to show Cassie was bad at reading liars. He'd been lying to her for God knew how long. "So, do you want me to wait?" she asked once Tessa was done. "No." Tessa sighed and let her shoulders fall. "We had a temp in last week who overbooked by twice the normal, and tonight we'll be working late. Dr. Levi said once he gets results, he'll call you on your cell, and then we can schedule an appointment for the next day or two to figure out what's wrong if nothing comes up on your blood." "And if something does show?" She didn't voice the pregnancy possibility. "What if I'm anemic or something?" "It can be treated. Don't worry. Dr. Levi will call you in a few hours and chat with you." She picked up her bag, put on her coat, and left the doctor's office feeling more stressed than when she'd walked in. Her phone rang a second time. It was another text, this time from Massimo, letting her know he was in town and would meet with her soon. Damn, she wasn't in the mood to see him now, but she'd already agreed. She headed to Jerry's building, wondering what could be wrong. She passed by Aurelius's bakery and stopped. The scent of honey buns made her stomach growl. She needed to grab some, or she might kill someone. The bell dinged on the door as she walked in. "Hi, Violet." Cassie smiled at Aurelius's sister. She was at the bakery more and more since Aurelius got back with her ex. An ex nobody knew about till after they got back together. "Hi, Cassie." Violet sighed as she wiped down the counter. "You just missed hell." Cassie raised her brows and glanced around the empty bakery. "Hell?" Violet nodded and placed 2 honey buns on a porcelain plate and filled a cup with tea. "There had to have been like 50 people here just now, all wanting something sweet." She came around the counter and put the plate on one of the tables. "Sit. You look dead on your feet. Is Jerry working you super hard?" She sat and groaned. Where did that come from? "No, not really. I'm actually headed to her office now. She's not in, but I need to check her mail and set up for tomorrow." She picked up a sticky, freshly baked bun with honey dripping from it. The dough so soft her fingers mushed it while she lifted it to her lips. "I'm supposed to meet someone there for dinner, too, but I so wanted these." She groaned when she took the first bite, letting the sweet, warm, gooey dessert make her taste buds dance and filled her with joy. Who knew food could do this to a woman? And it wasn't even chocolate. Violet laughed and brushed a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear. "I would ask if you should be eating this before dinner, but clearly you should." She sipped her tea and thought about canceling her dinner with Massimo, but he had gone out of his way to be nice to her. Even after she told him there was no chance for them, he'd never gotten fresh or tried to push her into an actual date. He told her he'd be her friend if she was open to that, and she was. "I shouldn't be eating these, but I can't help myself," she mumbled between bites. "They're addictive." Violet shook her head with a grin. "You sound like some of the bear shifters that come in here, desperate for a fix." She stopped the second honey bun midway to her mouth. "A fix?" "For honey. You know, bears and honey." Violet giggled. "If I could get you to deliver this to my house, I'd never leave my bed," Cassie told her honestly. She licked her fingers after the last bite of the second honey bun and gulped down the tea. "Okay, I gotta go. But you rock, and I will be back for more tomorrow." "I know," Violet winked. "It's why I'm making these in the evenings, too. Just for you." And here I thought my dependency on these wasn't that obvious. She gave an embarrassed giggle. Damn, was she that desperate for sweets? She headed for the door, opened it, and stopped. The cold wind howled around her and made her face burn a little from the low temperature. She inhaled and sighed. Why did she enjoy the cold so much lately? It made her sleepy and ready to put on her comfiest PJs and take a nap. She glanced over her shoulder at Violet and waved. "Thank you." Cassie burrowed her face into her thick woolen eternity scarf wrapped around her neck. She yanked out her mittens and put them on and was glad she'd worn her warmest boots. It was freezing. She got in her car and drove the short distance to Jerry's place. When she got there, Massimo was already at the front of the building. She got out of the car and let him give her a kiss on her cheek.
"Cassandra, you look beautiful."
He spoke with an accent she still couldn't place, and smiled as he raked his gaze over her. He sniffed and came closer, the smile dying on his lips.
"Cassie, how are you?"
She cleared her throat and shrugged. "I'm good. Let's go upstairs so I can do this mail before we get some food. I'm starving." He laughed.
"I'm sure. You look exhausted. Are you sure you're up for dinner?"
She frowned but didn't say anything. She must look like shit for him to be the second person to say that to her. "I'm fine." They got in the elevator at the same time her cell phone started ringing. The call fell through due to bad service. They'd just gotten off on Jerry's floor when it rang again. "Hi," she said, recognizing Dr. Levi's office.
"Hi, Cassie. We have your test results," she heard Myra's voice tell her.
"I hope you're not too shocked to find out you're pregnant." Cassie's throat ran dry. She cleared it twice, but wasn't sure what to say. "Are you sure?" "Oh, honey, we are very sure, especially with how far along you are. 3 months. "Wait, what?" She couldn't be 3 months pregnant. She only had sex a month ago with Talon, and before that she had been getting herself off with battery-operated buddies for at least 6 months. So how in the world could she be 3 months pregnant? "I think you must have someone else's test results. Those dates don't add up." "Really?" Myra sounded confused. "We can run them again and I'll get back to you." "Thank you. That would be great." She was pretty sure at this point there was no way they had her test results. They must have confused them with someone else's. She clicked off the phone and glanced up to catch Massimo staring at her with confusion.
"Everything okay?"
he asked. She nodded. "A mix-up at the doctor's office. They must have gotten someone else's results." She didn't go into the actual diagnosis, but saw understanding fill his eyes.
"Cassie, you are definitely pregnant."
He said the words so softly, she wondered how she heard him. "How could you know?" Then she thought about his shifter hearing. "Oh, you heard what she said." She shook her head and tapped his arm. They must have made a mistake. He grabbed her by her arms and met her gaze with his own solemn one.
"She's not wrong. I'm telling you because I consent it. You are having a baby."
The floor fell from under her feet, and she wavered. He helped her stand and guided her to the closest wall. "I can't be 3 months pregnant. That's impossible."
"It's not impossible."
He cupped her chin.
"Not if it's a shifter baby."
"What?" She was too confused to figure out what he was saying. A weird buzzing started in her head. It grew louder and loud, and her muscles started feeling weaker and weaker.
They grow at a faster rate. A month can be 3 for a shifter child. So, to your human brain, you are pregnant 1 month, but the baby developing inside you is growing at a faster rate.
Oh shit. The door to her left opened, and she turned her face to see Jerry. Behind Jerry, Talon followed. The fury in his gaze at seeing Massimo's hands on her face turned her blood to ice. She didn't get a chance to say anything. The buzzing in her head blocked out everything else, pulling her out of reality and sending her into darkness. "21. Talon wanted to kill the man with his hands on Cassie. He didn't. That in itself was hard enough. He didn't give him a swift death because Jerry warned him she wouldn't help him if he did. "Massimo!" Jerry said the other guy's name after he'd introduced himself while lifting an unconscious Cassie into his arms. "Bring her inside and lay her on the sofa." Massimo met Talon's gaze.
She's just a friend.
Talon's bear didn't give a fuck if he claimed to be just a friend. The other shifter was touching his mate. A mate that was expecting his child. Right now, he was having a hell of a time keeping the bear under control. He wanted to roar and tear Massimo limb from limb. He wanted to toss his lifeless body away from Cassie. "Stop the growling, Talon," Jerry snapped. "You scared her into fainting. There's something you don't see every day." Massimo snorted and stepped back once he placed Cassie on the sofa.
It wasn't him that shocked her as much as finding out she's pregnant.
Jerry nodded, her brows drawn into a worried frown. "I can scent it. She's pretty far along. If I hadn't been so preoccupied with my friend, I would have been able to give her the news myself." She pushed Cassie's hair away from her face. Though her caramel skin looked healthy, she appeared pale since the last time Talon had seen her.
"Is she okay?"
he finally asked Jerry.
"She looks sick."
Jerry glanced at him like he'd said something stupid. "She's human, carrying an alien shifter baby. Her body's working overtime. She's probably really tired right now."
"She's been very tired,"
Massimo supplied. With a quirk of his lips, he met Talon's gaze.
"You don't need to growl. She's my friend. I knew she wasn't well lately. This explains why."
"She's complained?" Jerry asked.
"She had to have someone watch her recently for a few days to make sure she was going to be okay,"
Massimo added, and grinned at Talon's deeper grunt.
"Open your mouth again about how much of a friend you are, and I will claw that grin off your face."
Talon's voice wasn't high. He didn't even sound angry. His voice was deathly soft and sharp enough to cut glass.
"You can stop your threats. I know a woman who's mated when I sniff her. It's not a threat. And talk about sniffing her again, and you're a dead man."
"Come on, Massimo. I'll take you back downstairs," Jerry said. She turned to Talon with a serious frown. "I'll be right back. Try not to make her faint twice in one night." What did she think he was going to do while she was gone? Run away with his mate? He should, but he was too worried about her condition. She appeared to need rest, and he'd stand guard and make sure she got it. Talon squatted by the sofa and caressed his hand over Cassie's cheek. She was cool to touch. She inhaled and let out a soft mumble, leaning her face into his hand. Warmth filled his heart. She liked his touch. He'd known from the moment he saw her she was the right woman for him. He brought his hand down to her belly. Though she was covered by a thick wool coat, he still placed it over her abdomen and felt his animal bond with the cub in his mate. He glanced out the large window by Jerry's fireplace. He needed to take Cassie with him. This climate was too harsh for her. Where he lived, it was warm and would feel comfortable for her. It would be easier to deal with while expecting a cub. He glanced at her face and watched as her eyes fluttered open. "Talon?" He nodded.
"How do you feel?"
"I'm pregnant," she sputtered, shock clear in her voice.
"I know."
"Did everyone know before me?" She frowned and tried to sit up. He offered her his hand and helped her.
"We're shifters. We can send changes. How do you feel?"
he asked again. "Fine." She glanced around and tugged off her scarf. "Where's Jerry?" He noticed she ignored meeting his gaze, and he wondered why.
"She went down with your friend."
She nodded. "Massimo, what are you doing here?" There was a bite to her tone, like his being there bothered her.
"I came for you."
She raised her brows and gasped. "Excuse me?" He finally got her to look at him, though it wasn't the kind of look he expected from his mate.
"You're mine, Cassie. I'm here to take you back to Aurora with me."
She rolled her eyes and snorted. "You're kidding, right? Mr. One Night Stand wants me long-term now that he knows I'm pregnant? I don't think so. You can take your furry ass right back to your planet, Talon. I don't need you."
"You do need me,"
he stated.
"I don't understand why you are fighting this. I can tell you want me still."
"Fuck you," she spat and stood and prayed she didn't throw up all over the place. "Everything isn't about sex. I have a child to think about now. I'm not just going to roll over and go anywhere with you. I have a life here." She started pacing in front of the window, where snow fell in thick sheets. She stopped and glared at him. "You have some nerve, coming over here now and acting like you give a shit." He stood, hoping to talk some sense into her. The front door opened, and Jerry walked in. "Well, it looks like you two are going to be staying in Tally's old apartment tonight." "What?" Cassie glanced at Jerry with wide eyes. "That blizzard is pretty bad. I'm not letting you go anywhere with the weather like it is." Jerry glanced from Cassie to Talon. "The place has 2 bedrooms, so no need to share each other's personal space." "Good." Cassie took the keys Jerry offered and headed for the door. "Thank you for letting us use that place tonight, Jerry. I'm going to lie down." "Tolly left some old clothes in there in case you're interested. They're all clean. I don't normally use the place unless I need to. Feel free to use anything there to make yourself comfortable." She nodded and walked out of the room. Jerry turned to face Talon. Her eyes were bright with her wolf. "What did you do to her?"
"Nothing. She seems to think I took too long to come after her."
"No," Jerry replied with an emphatic shake of her head. "There's something else there. She's been angry with you since we left Aurora." He thought back.
"I left her to find my brother. That probably did not go well with her."
Jerry pursed her lips. "I don't know."
"I'll talk to her."
"You didn't do a very good job of convincing her to go with you."
"I know."
He just got there. He needed to spend time with her, and he was sure he'd get her to come back with him. She belonged with him. "I'm going to offer some advice, and if you're smart, you're going to follow it." She walked with him out of her apartment and down the hall. "Don't tell her she has to come with you or that she belongs with you. That's never going to go over well with an independent woman."
"She does belong with me. She's my mate."
"Are you hard of hearing? I just said you can't be telling her that. You need to spend time with her. Get her to trust you." Jerry sighed. "No offense, but you did something to not make a good impression on the first meeting, and that will make things harder now."
"She's having my baby."
He didn't plan on going back home without her,
and he sure as hell wasn't leaving her behind.
She's aware of that. We all are. But you aren't dealing with a shifter female, and not one from your planet. Cassie will probably want to get to know you and make sure she's making the right decision, not just for herself, but for her child.
Others have come to Aurora. Why would it be different for her?
Because the other girls who came to your planet were linked to each other somehow. They didn't have families worrying about them. She stopped in front of a closed door. He knew Cassie was in there. Her scent called to him. Even through the closed door, he knew where she was. Cassie has a family. She spends time with them. They are close from what I gathered. She won't leave as easily as the others did. She'll need to be convinced.
A child needs to be with his father. My cub should be with me.
Jerry glowered at him. That's not really the best way to win her over. And for your information, that argument won't fly on this planet, with the number of single mothers doing a hell of a job raising their children alone. How about romancing her? Ever think of that, Sherlock?
Who?
Never mind. You will have to get her to realize you want her to come with you because you want not just the baby, but her too. Especially her. You want her to feel loved, and like this is the right thing for her to do, because she wants to, not because you want her to.
So, what does that mean?
She sniggered and opened the door to motion him in. It means you show her you're in love with her, make her deliriously happy. Then she will gladly go to another planet and live out her existence with a man who she feels is worth her time. Until then, you are stuck here on Earth.
I don't have much time, he growled. There's issues with my clan. My brother is giving me problems.
She bit her lip and nodded. Then you better get started with the groveling. "22. Cassie let the water drip down her back. She caressed her belly roll and grinned. A baby. She'd been wanting children for a while now, especially since she got to hold little Avery. It was like her life was finally going where it needed to be, even if she hadn't been expecting it. Not really. She'd been on birth control since she was a teen, and it had never failed her until now. This was surreal. Talon had gotten her pregnant on a one-night stand, and then after he sent someone to tell her she was nothing but sex, he decided to show up and assume she'd just fall at his feet. Idiot. She leaned her head forward under the spray and tried to imagine what her baby would look like. Would it be a boy or a girl? Would he or she have Talon's fair skin, or her darker one? Would he or she be grumpy or fun-loving? The image of a little girl like Avery popped into her head. Then one of a little boy with Talon's eyes and her no-nonsense attitude. A pair of hands grabbed her from behind, caressing her back and sliding down to her hips. She rolled around, sputtering water and wiping her eyes to glare at Talon. "Are you out of your fucking mind?" He raised his brows.
No? Why would I be?
"You're in my shower," she said matter-of-factly. "I didn't invite you in here."
You want me in here with you, Cassie. You miss me. My mate.
She tried to shove him back, but there was little room in the tiny shower. "You have your own room. Go take a shower over there."
I've missed you. I have dreamt of holding you for the past few days.
She snorted. "Yeah, right. Tell me why you're really here, Talon." He cocked his head and pursed his lips.
I'm here because you're my mate. I want you. I want you by my side, and I want our offspring with both of us.
She tried to stay angry, but she wasn't used to arguing with a naked man while she was naked as well. It was taking her out of her anger zone, watching his abs tighten and his arm muscles shift. "Put some clothes on." His lips lifted into a naughty grin.
Why?
Because I can't argue with you when we're both naked." He nodded, and instead of turning to get out of the shower, he came closer, taking over her space and curling one hand around her slick waist and cupping her neck with the other.
I don't want to argue, mate. I missed you.
No, she wouldn't fall for that one. Talon, this isn't the time or the place. He dipped his head and cut her off, taking her lips in a sweet kiss. Had he been rough or wild, she might have had an easier time pushing him away. But as it was, her heart fluttered with the swipe of his tongue over her lips. He met her gaze and pulled back enough to let her grab a breath of air.
I missed you so much. Let me show you.
She gulped back the desire wrecking her thinking ability and making her belly churn. She should send him to hell and ignore her body's basic needs. But she wanted him, and she wanted them on better terms. He was her child's father. She didn't want a hateful relationship with him, not when she still had the hopes of something flourishing between them. It was stupid, but she couldn't stop the hope. She leaned forward, giving him her response with her lips. She curled her arms around his neck and grazed her nails over the back of his neck. God, he was so soft, his skin so warm and smooth. She was taken by surprise when he curled his hands around her ass, palming both cheeks, and picked her up. Her legs immediately went around his hips. He pressed her back against the tiled shower wall, water pounding over both of them. She couldn't wait. She slid a hand between them, guiding his cock into her entrance, and met his gaze. Please, she murmured. She might not want to want him, but she did. Right now, all her thoughts strayed from being angry to being his again. He took her lips and dove his tongue into her mouth at the same time he drove his cock into her sex. He held her firmly against the tiled wall and grasped the back of her shoulder with his other hand while he fucked her. She felt the moment his fingers shifted into claws and the sharp points dug into the back of her shoulder. He growled something that sounded a lot like mine between kisses. Her heart fluttered wildly with each of his driving thrusts. Her body beckoned for more of him, his cock, his delightful possession of her. It went on. The warm water fell over them as he continued his scratching of her shoulder and fucking her like the end of the world was near. Maybe it was. At this point, she couldn't find it in her to care. She clung to his neck, kissing hard and rough. His hips pulled back and drove in at a speed she couldn't keep up with. Her back stayed pressed on the wall while he filled her with his cock. God, she moaned the one time she gasped for breath.
Your welcoming heat is driving me crazy. I can't hold on much longer.
She shuddered at the intense pleasure that suddenly took hold of her. The orgasm had been unexpected. It rocked her hard. His drive slowed until he held stiff, his shaft thicker and bigger than before. Streams of semen filled her. She felt her body grow boneless and was glad he had her securely in his arms. He carried her out of the shower, still firmly inside her, to the bed. He lay with her on top of him and draped a long towel over her back. Her long, wet hair was pushed to the side.
Give me a chance.
A chance for what? She worried what he truly wanted, because she knew he could hurt her more than he knew.
To prove to you we can make things work. You're not alone. Baby or no baby, I want to be with you.
It took her a moment of debating, but her heart was telling her to stop worrying so much and give the shifter a chance. She had never dated one of his kind, and he might prove to be a better man than those in her past. Plus, her hope was he was being honest, because she wanted them to give their baby a family. A happy one. She would never chance it if she thought he might not be there for the right reasons. One chance, Tal. Prove to me you're here for me and not to get your way, and we might be able to make things work out.
I won't let you down.
The conviction in his voice brought a smile to her face. She hoped he didn't. She really hoped. 23. Talon took Jerry's words to heart. He was going to show Cassie how much he cared for her. He spent the night learning the internet and searching for ideas to please his mate. He should have listened to Dylan, but he'd been too pressed for time to learn anything about Earth females. Now he had to work with what he learned on their old-style information network. Everything would be a surprise for his love. She'd agreed to give him a chance to show her how much he truly cared for her, and that he would make an effort to show a relationship could work for them. Not just sex-based, though they had that well under control. Bundled in winter-warm apparel, Cassie parked in the community center's parking lot. Talon hurried out of the passenger seat to open her car door. He'd learned a lot about dating and how to make your woman orgasm multiple times. Most of it he already knew. Some things about romance were new to him. Other stuff would come in handy for later, especially the sections on battery-operated toys. Due to a learning curve on map reading, they were late for their first outing. Talon took Cassie's hand and hurried her down a hallway past children in various areas. Toddlers playing on padded floors with toys. One older group looked to be rehearsing for a play. Coming upon a woman at a table outside a closed door, Talon said they had signed up online. "Hurry, take this." She handed him a blue rolled-up mat. "And take the first open spot. Enjoy and congratulations." 24. Talon opened the door and rushed Cassie inside to the coat corner. They made such a commotion arguing about who was taking her coat and gloves off, the speaker cleared her throat from the front of the room. Spread out across the room, pregnant couples sat on small blue mats on the floor. Cassie snapped her head to face him. "Talon, what exactly did you search for online?"
"Events for pregnant women,"
he said with pride. Cassie groaned, then laughed, taking his hand and finding a vacant spot. After watching a video of a live birth, Talon thought he was going to be sick. His opinions on childbirth and mates changed. He would be the first of his clan to attend the birth of his child. All males would follow his example. A couple hours later, Cassie helped a dizzy Talon to the passenger's side of her car. "Let me do all the breathing when the time comes. We don't need you passing out again," she said while she started up the engine.
A hearty laugh erupted from her.
Talon smiled to himself after swallowing more bile. Females gave birth all the time on Aurora. Did none of the males attend their child's birthing? He'd have to check with Alex, since he had 3 children. The birthing process worried him. Would Cassie have a lot of pain like the women in the videos? He didn't like the idea of his mate in pain. Sitting in the car, waiting for the heater to warm, Cassie was almost too afraid to ask. "So, Talon, what's next?"
"I have purchased tickets for a thing called a movie."
Cassie let out a sigh of relief.
Movies were highly rated on date sites. Many comments referred to making out.
A zing of heat raced to her core. That would just be the beginning. Inside the dark theater in the South Line Mall, Talon sniffed the piece of popcorn between his thumb and finger.
"I much prefer the little chocolate drop to this dry thing. It sticks in my teeth."
The lights dimmed. Talon jumped up, looking for danger. Cassie pulled him down and tried to hold back a chuckle. "Talon, shh. Sit down. It's fine. They have to turn the lights down to see the movie." He slowly lowered to his seat, growling at those staring wide-eyed at him. She felt a little bad that he was so concerned about something as laid back as a movie theater. 20 minutes later, she told herself she should have known better as she walked a few steps ahead of Talon, headed down the mall.
"I'm sorry, love, but no one fights with glowing-colored sticks."
She huffed. "I'm fine with that. It was your insistence of convincing everyone in the theater they had issues with. Plus, they didn't appreciate your constant demands to turn down the sound."
"Your delicate ears can be damaged. The only thing that loud on our planet is a dragon roar during battle."
Cassie stopped and spun toward him. He was so close that he bumped into her, grabbing her arms before she hit the ground.
"My mate, you must be careful. You carry our air. You must be tired."
He hefted Cassie into his arms.
"Let us sit and rest."
"Talon, put me down. You're embarrassing me." He carried her across the wide aisle, separating one side of the mall from the other.
"Don't worry. It's my pleasure to take care of you. It's my responsibility."
"Stop right there." Cassie wiggled, But Talon held tightly until sitting on a bench, she on his lap. Talon, first off, stop calling me my mate.
But you are my mate, love.
Says who? Beside you. Talon looked confused.
I don't understand. We are born that way. It's not up to you or me to decide if we are mates. Jerry told me you might not understand, but I don't really know how to explain it to you. That's how it is on our planet. Our animal knows.
That's just it. I don't have an animal to tell me who's perfect for me. I have to do it on my own, and I have chosen wrong in the past. So wrong that my life was turned upside down. I won't let that happen again.
When we get to my planet, I will always protect you. There's nothing you will want for. You are my priority.
She huffed out a frustrated breath. You can't assume I'm going with you.
Then I will stay on this planet.
The assurance in his voice scared her into looking at him. She spun to him. Oh, no, you're not. You have a clan to run. He blew out a sigh. An intense feeling of loss slammed into her. Her heart broke. But these weren't her feelings. She knew how she felt. These were someone else's feelings. Someone who was sad and bewildered at the same time. Is this what Talon felt for her? Was she somehow able to feel what he was feeling? If she was, he was not just sad. He was unsure how to proceed with her and wanting to do things to make her happy. Those were the strongest feelings she got at that moment. Great. She was not just pregnant, she was also delusional. Look, Talon, I admit I feel more than just attraction for you. Okay, a lot more, but she'd start with that. She eyed a snack food restaurant across the way. Let's get a hot dog and talk where it's quieter. Inside the small eatery, Cassie picked a booth while Talon got the food. He sniffed, then scowled on his way to her.
Do you know what this meat smells like?
Cassie put her hands up and waved them, along with a head shake. Don't tell me. I want to enjoy them still.
You should be safe. Under the chili, cheese, relish, mustard, and onions, the smell is covered.
His brow went up.
Still, I'll watch you to make sure nothing harms you from this meal.
25. She scowled back. Yeah, just give it here. I'm starving. They ate in silence, Cassie not knowing what to say. She wanted Talon, but was afraid of all the change that would follow, along with the consequences for a wrong decision. Especially now. Dear God. Now she had a child to think about. If that didn't send her into an instant panic attack, she didn't know what would. A child that depended on her to make the right choices for him or her. She couldn't fuck up now. Talon, why did you leave the castle that next morning? Why didn't you stay with me? Damn it, she shouldn't ask, but she really wanted to know. That morning she'd felt so much, and him leaving had really hurt her. Then the fact he sent someone to remind her it was just sex had stomped any feelings blooming in her heart for him. He sighed and took a moment before he answered. Was he preparing a lie? Thinking up an excuse to make it seem she wasn't just a booty call? But that was all she was after, wasn't it? Fuck, she was so confused.
I had a situation at home that needed my attention. I planned to come back after you had awakened, but I was badly injured.
Injured? Talon, what happened? Her belly flipped, and she now wished she hadn't eaten. The image of him bleeding and hurt tore at her insides.
I hoped to not worry you with this, but there are no secrets between mates. My brother Paxton is sabotaging everything I do. I'm damn sure he wants control of the clan, but he won't do what's required to earn that position. He's angry and resentful and has caused conflict in the clan. Conflict we haven't had in the time I've been in charge.
What kind of conflict?
The moment I woke beside you that morning, I was the happiest I've ever been in my life. I had you in my arms, and we would be together forever. But my brother, who was under guard at the castle, escaped. He's turned my world to hell since I've been leading the clan. I had to find him before he hurts someone like Bella or the babies.
Cassie sucked in a hard breath. He wouldn't dare. Alex would skin him alive.
I couldn't take that chance. I went home and found the clan office being torn apart by 3 who followed Paxton. His delusional ideas are popular amongst the younger clan members. When I approached, they attacked me and my second-in-command.
Pain entered his eyes. She saw the love for his people shining through the sadness. He had a huge heart, strong heart. Maybe he did care for her like he claimed. Maybe this could work. Hope started to grow in her wary heart again. He looked at the half-eaten meal, burying his eyes from her sight. Cassie lifted his chin to meet his eyes. You had to protect yourself, Talon. Put any ache out of your mind. I see why you had to leave. You made the right choice. It made sense now that he left.
I came back a few days later, after my healing sleep, but you were already gone.
Cassie put her finger over his lips. I understand. And she did. He hadn't wanted to leave her. But what about that guy? So at least she knew she hadn't been a one-night stand. Was there a future between them? That was another story. I've put everything together from Jerry introducing us to why you are here now. You don't have to be here, baby or not. But you are. Even leaving your people in possible danger. He sighed and nodded.
I must get back, Cassie, but I'm not leaving without you. If you won't come home from me, then do it for our cup. Let our clan doctor look you over to make sure everything is normal and on schedule.
That made a lot of sense. There went her argument over not going back with him. Her doctor wouldn't know a thing about birthing a baby bear. All right, I will go with you, but just to see the doctor. A wide smile brightened Talon's face.
You got it, my love.
26. You've made a wise decision, Cassie. Jerry was pleased Cassie was leaving with Talon, even if it was only for a couple days. I'll be here when you return. Cassie hugged her friend tightly and took Talon's hand. Moments later, Cassie was on her knees, throwing up her lunch on a foreign planet. Talon held her hair to the side and rubbed her back.
I'm sorry you don't travel well through the portal, love. I've heard it takes time for humans to acclimate.
Cassie had only strength to nod and remain on all fours, wobbling at that. Talon carefully lifted her into his arms.
Let me take you home. There you can rest, and the clan healer will come.
She was fine with that. As long as a bed and pillow were under her, she didn't care. Maybe soup would be a better choice for lunch. She should ask Talon what he smelled in the hot dogs, so she'll never eat another one again. Talon approached a cabin blended in with the trees. If she hadn't been looking for it, she might have missed it. The front looked like a charming, romantic getaway type of place. It seemed a little small, but it was only Talon living there, right? He carried her over the threshold and into a quaint sitting room with rustic, lodge-like furniture. The side tables appeared handcrafted, with exquisite details of bears in different scenes. They passed through another framed opening into a nice-sized kitchen with a granite-like center island. She could cook anything in here. Food sounded good at that point, but so did sleep. Talon shouldered open a door and stepped into a dark room. Instantly, her senses were filled with him. It smelled so wonderful. A heat warmed her core like the night she and Talon had been together at Alex's castle and back at Tally's old apartment. Would they again? She wanted that so much. Sure, she could deny it, but he had really dug himself into her mind, body, and soul. Even if she weren't pregnant, she could admit to herself now that she'd never gone a day without thinking about him and wondering what could have been.
Here you go, love.
He laid her on a soft bed, took off her boots, and pulled the plush flannel comforter to her neck. This was heaven. Talon kissed her on the forehead.
Rest, my mate. I will be at the clan headquarters for a while. If you feel the need to get out, follow the trail on the side of the house. It will lead you to me.
Cassie rolled onto her side and inhaled his sweet scent from the pillow and was asleep before she released the breath. Talon opened the door of his office to angry shouts. Dylan stood toe-to-toe with the father of one of the boys who attacked him and Dylan a few days ago.
Lydorn, I'm here now. State your business.
Talon gave a nod to Dylan and he left the room. The father shrank under the gaze of their leader. At least his son didn't cower. And what was the man afraid of? Talon had never raised a hand or his voice at any of his people. That wasn't the way of the clan.
Lydorn, what's the problem? We have already discussed your son's death. I'm very sorry for the incident, but the vids clearly showed the attack.
Rage lit the man's eyes, his bear peeking out momentarily.
I want someone to pay for the wrong done to my child. Fine. Then you tell me who is going to pay for the wrong done to me by your son and his friends. Not only the buildings, but there's also my personal wounds serious enough to require a healing sleep.
The man's face paled.
I did not know you required the healing sleep. Regardless, someone is responsible for my child's murder.
Talon didn't understand what this man wanted.
Who is tasked with the duty of raising children in our clan, Lydorn? Is it not the parents? What do you want me to do? He was so young.
Tears reddened the father's eyes.
His death should not have happened. If you want someone to blame, then find Paxton.
Talon didn't have time for more bullshit from his brother.
I will.
The man spun around and stomped out the door. Talon plopped into his chair and rubbed his hands over his face. He was so tired of this. The only thing he wanted was to snuggle under the covers with his mate and practice making another cub. He was half hard in a second. Dylan knocked and popped his head in.
Talon, the warrior king from Galaxa, Vander Casval, is waiting for you in the conference room.
Shit. He'd forgotten about his meeting to finalize plans to build the king's natural site home. Thank the powers Cassie decided to come with him when she did.
Dylan, would you please have the doctor go to my house to examine my pregnant mate?
Dylan almost jumped back in surprise.
When did this all come about? Congratulations. I didn't even know you had been able to bring her back, or that Cassie was pregnant. It all happened quite suddenly. I'll explain all after my meeting.
He headed toward the conference room, trying to get his head into business mode from mating fantasy. An uncomfortable churn twisted his stomach. He had the feeling something bad was coming to a head. Something very bad. 27. Cassie opened her eyes. She wasn't sure where she was. Her brain registered Tal's scent, and she remembered she was in his bedroom, in his bed, the perfect place to be. She also sensed she was in a large space. The air felt different than in a normal house. Not to mention that it was can't see your hand in front of your face dark. She reached out for a nightstand and maybe a lamp. After twisting the knob, her whereabouts came into view. Sorta. The light was dim, but she thought she was in a cave. The walls and ceiling were smooth and rounded, light gray in color. Not a corner in any part of the room. She must be dreaming. She distinctly remembered the front of the house and kitchen. Noise on the other side of the door drew her attention. Sounded like dishes and silverware clanging. She got out of bed and peeked out the door. A woman around her age stood at the kitchen's island with a bowl of the most delicious-smelling food in front of her. Man, was she starving. She'd make introductions while eating. Hi, my name is Cassie. Are you going to eat that? Maybe a bit abrupt, but her stomach and the baby were growling. She slid onto a stool, not taking her eyes from the bowl. The laugh from the lady was soothing and had a tinkle to it. I made it for you. I figured by now you'd need to eat if you were resting, and the clan leader never lacks for food for anyone. She scooted the bowl toward Cassie. I was sent to see you. You must be Cassie, the new mate. There were rumors he met someone, but this is the first anyone has seen of you. You're not from here. No, I'm from... Cassie's mind darted to the conversation in the castle hallway the morning she left. The man said Talon was already mated. She said, new mate. Did this make the lady the old mate? Holy shit. Was this his wife? It was true? Her heart was crushed. Shit. What should she say to the wife of the man who was the father of her child? Nothing. That's what. She kept her eyes on her bowl, ignoring the awkward silence. Talon. She needed to find him and demand he take her back. Better yet, she could go without him. The remote for the travel wormhole thingy was easy to operate and on the edge of the counter. She just needed to remember how to get to the location. It was on a well-worn path, that much she remembered. The woman watched her expectantly, probably waiting for an explanation of who she was and why she was in her and Talon's home. Cassie cleared her throat. I'm sorry. You must have me confused with someone else. Do you by chance know where the place you travel to different locations is? She grabbed the control and scooted toward the door. His wife frowned, and wrinkles appeared between her drawn brows. I don't understand. Are you going someplace? Yes, home. Isn't this your home? Here with us? Us? Cassie scoffed. No, I don't do the polygamy thing. I'm sorry, I don't know that word. Just tell me how to get to the launch pad or whatever you call it, and I'll be out of your hair. The woman looked a little miffed at her directness. Cassie didn't care. She didn't plan on seeing this woman ever again. The path on the side of the house takes you to the leader's offices as well as the portal. They are next to each other, but you shouldn't go. Cassie waved a hand on her way to the door. Got it. Thank you. Sorry if I caused your marriage any trouble. The door closed on her last words as she ran toward the path, away from the heartache and lies. Why did life pick her to dump on? What had she done to deserve so much distress? Did she piss off the gods in her former life? Echoes from Talon's wife chased her through the forest, but she was crying too hard to understand any words. Up ahead, she saw a building where the path came out of the trees. To the side of the building was a park-like setting with benches focused around a central area. Perhaps that was the place. A man stepped out from behind a tree in front of her.
Well, who do we have here?
Another voice came behind her.
Yeah, that's her. I can't believe she's stupid enough to come here.
He looked familiar.
I told you Talon didn't want a weak human for a mate. A quick fuck is all you...
His nose lifted into the air. A slimy grin spread across his face.
Well, boys, I'm going to be an uncle. Isn't that exciting?
Uncle? Paxton? The male froze at hearing his name from her mouth. One of the men grabbed her arms and pulled them behind her back. What the hell? Let go of me, jerk!
Hold her right there, Lydorn.
Paxton sauntered up to her and ran a finger down her cheek to the base of her neck. He wrapped 2 fingers around her collar and ripped the shirt away, tearing the shoulder to reveal claw marks.
And there is the proof. You are his mate. He's claimed you already.
She stopped struggling. What do you mean he's claimed me?
His mark is clear as day, which means he will do anything to keep you safe. And with a cub to protect, he'd even give up his life.
His eyes twinkled with eerie madness.
Change of plans, boys. Instead of waiting for my brother to come out here, we are just going to keep her as a bargaining tool.
With her arms pulled behind her, her chest was thrust out. Paxton licked his lips.
I see what my brother likes about you, even if you are a stinking, worthless human.
He slid his hands over her breasts and squeezed them between his fingers, hard. Cassie cried out in pain. Get your hands off me, you son of a bitch! Her knee came up firmly, ensconcing itself between his legs. Paxton doubled over, yet managed to get an uppercut punch to her jaw. Her world spun. Her eyes wouldn't focus, and her legs had no strength, dragging the guy holding onto her to the ground. The cool leaves and pine needles felt good pressed against her burning jaw, but that didn't last long before she was jerked to her feet by her shirt. Anger and embarrassment fueled Paxton's rage. She saw it in his eyes. Heat rolled off his red face. She tried to smile, not sure if her swelling cheek allowed it. Talon will rip you a new asshole as soon as he finds out about this. Even if Talon wanted her as a second wife, he still wanted her, and he wouldn't let anyone hurt her. She was dragged closer to him, nose to nose.
He's not going to find out, because you won't be around to tell him.
Paxton lifted his hand in front of her face, and fingers transformed into long claws. He raked them across her stomach. She felt flesh scrape away in deep gouges. Just before passing out, she heard a growl from the direction of the house. Great. The wife had joined the party. "28. Unease crawled up Talon's back, but he tried to ignore it to finish his meeting with Vander Casval.
I must say, Talon, your ideas are unique, and I especially like the hidden caverns for stockpiles. Those will come in very handy. When can you begin? I can have my men start surveying in a few days. That would be perfect. I'll wait to hear from you at my command center. I must return to Galaxa now. I have been away longer than I feel comfortable with.
Talon gestured toward the door.
Absolutely. Let me escort you to the portal.
As soon as they walked outside, the scent of blood reached both men. Each froze, eyes narrowed, noses into the wind. Talon recognized the smell immediately.
Cassie!
From the path came a battle roar from one seriously pissed-off bear. As he ran forward, he thought now there would be two. Sliding to a stop at the forest path entrance, Talon saw bears and men fighting. Seemed 4 were against a smaller one. The biggest of the group had an opening and swatted the littlest bear into the trees lining the path. Talon recognized his brother immediately. Leaping off 2 feet, Talon launched at Paxton, landing 4 claw-tipped paws on his back. Talon tore into his sibling with vengeance, both rolling across the ground. Talon transformed back to bipedal.
Paxton, shift. I want to talk to you.
Paxton lumbered forward with a growl.
I said shift. Now.
Unable to defy the alpha command, his brother began to shift. He fought it with everything he had.
No!
A furious, panting Paxton sat on the ground, staring up at him. A maniacal laugh erupted from his sibling. When had Paxton gone over the edge? Talon had so much going on after their parents passed, he never had time for family. Around him, sounds of battle raged. He wondered why the other men weren't attacking him as well. A quick glance answered his question as Casval struck down the last man standing. Where was Cassie? Her blood soaked the air. Too much blood.
Well, Talon, my brother, it seems we finally get to have that talk you've been wanting for so long. I'm glad you can spare a moment of your time for me.
Guilt slammed into Talon.
You know my responsibilities as the leader, Paxton. I had hopes that you would assist me with them.
Nerve-grating laughter escaped Paxton.
Assist you, brother? And actually do work while so many would do it for me? Some if forced. Then throw away all the willing and not so willing women flashing their pussies, wanting the honor of a piece of this.
He grabbed himself.
You are truly delusional.
Talon shook his head.
I'm sorry I failed you, little brother. You are my responsibility since our parents are gone.
Paxton jumped to his feet.
Don't give me your haughty speech on how you care for your people. I got so tired of hearing Dad say that.
His brother tore handfuls of hair from his head, releasing blood into the air, exciting his animal.
That's the main reason I got rid of him and Mom. All the lies, all the deceit.
Shock hit him square in the chest. He took a step back.
What do you mean, got rid of him, Paxton? What did you do?
Giggles came from his brother's mouth.
I didn't do anything, big brother. Those boulders were totally accidental.
His hand covered his laughter. Caswell came up behind Paxton and held him.
What do you wish to do with this murderer, leader of the Arctos? It would be my honor to rid the planet of such filth.
Talon walked up to his restrained sibling.
Paxton, I'm truly sorry for failing you.
He let out a deep sigh.
Thank you, Vander, for your offering. You are probably correct in suggesting we do that. But I love my brother, despite everything. I don't believe he really understands what he's done. He will stay in a holding room until the council and I decide what must be done according to our laws and traditions. That is the right thing to do.
He signaled to several men standing back along the path.
Dylan, you and some men take Paxton to the cells, then get the rest of the bodies taken care of.
The king tipped his head toward Talon.
I will see myself to the portal. You have further business to take care of.
He glanced into the woods, closer to the path entrance. Talon didn't understand what he meant. Then a cool wind swept away the stink of hate and stench of death, leaving a fresh trail of blood. Cassie's blood. His mind twirled into panic. Where was Cassie? He smelled her but didn't see her. He believed she wasn't here, not seeing her when he arrived at the scene.
Movement among the trees caught his eye.
He raced headlong through the forest, barely watching where he was going, his eyes fixed on a prone, bloody body. He fell to his knees by her side, lifting her limp hand to his lips.
Don't leave me, Cassie. I will follow you and my child wherever you go this day.
The doctor, leaning over her, looked up at him. She will be fine, Talon. She has lost much blood, but the child within is very strong, as is his bear. They will heal their mother and protect her from infection. A tear escaped Talon's eye.
Thank you. Are you all right? I saw my brother knock you into the woods.
Yes, he tried to keep me from getting to your mate, keep her from healing. But everything seems fine with the young one. Size and weight are in the large, normal range. Looks to be another big boy, like his father. He grinned a huge smile.
A boy. My son.
The doctor frowned. Talon, it seems your mate is under the impression I am your mate, if I understood her actions correctly. Granted, I was making food for her in your kitchen, but that is normal for single males. Have you discussed our ways and ways of the bears with her? With a sigh, he laid Cassie's hand on her stomach and lifted her into his arms.
There is a long story attached to our mating, but when she is safely in my den again, we will have a long talk.
"29. Cassie woke to a light pain shooting across her stomach. Nothing serious. Felt like a strain or pulled muscle. Talon's smell instantly filled her senses. Her heart tripped with happiness, then crashed with the onslaught of recent memories.
I smell your distress, love, and it hurts me. What do you fear?
She opened her eyes to the most handsome man she had ever seen. Talon, what's happened? Where am I? She began to sit up. He gently pushed her shoulders back to the mattress.
You are where you belong, in our den, our home. You've been in healing sleep for a day. You must continue to rest.
Pain dug further into her heart. I can't be here while your wife is too. I can't believe you'd lie to me like that. What does your clan think of you cheating on your wife? She shook her head. Never mind. You're all probably into some freaky multiple wives club. Talon's eyes widened.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have another. You are my true mate.
Then why send someone to tell me you're mated? That you wouldn't want a weak human anyway. You didn't even have the balls to tell me to my face. She rolled over and buried her face in the pillow. Not only did she feel stupid for crying, but her body hurt.
Come, love. Sit with me.
He lifted her and carried her into the living room, featuring a cozy living room fireplace. He sat in an oversized recliner and positioned her across his lap so she leaned her shoulder against his chest.
Now, let's start from the beginning.
Cassie opened her mouth, and he put a finger over it.
I wanted you from the moment I saw you. My animal told me we were mates, so there is no doubt to that. We've been destined to be together. Everything I have is yours, including my soul, heart, and life. I'm not afraid, because it's right. I can never hurt you.
She relaxed into his body, but kept quiet.
Now, beautiful. Tell me about this person who told you I was mated. Was he in the forest on the path?
Yes, was that Paxton? You only have the one brother?
It was. And yes, just him. I thought when he escaped the guards at the castle that he would flee into hiding. But obviously, he didn't. Did he tell you I had a mate?
And that I was for sex only, which is all I wanted at first. But I fell for you. And when I woke up in your bed the other day, your wife was in the kitchen.
You're confused. You met the clan healer.
Why was she cooking in your kitchen?
Because she knew you would need to eat after resting. I wouldn't have been back for a while. She was doing what doctors do, taking care of their patients.
Good fucking Lord. Now she felt like a complete idiot. How would she live this down?
Now that is taken care of. You understand you are the only one for me, right?
She nodded.
And I love and will protect you and our cubs with my life. Always.
She rubbed her stomach and nodded again.
That's all you need to remember.
She melted into his warm body. She thought back on everything that had happened this past month. So many things had changed, but yet so much stayed the same. Like her lack of love from her dad. That didn't matter. Too much. She had her own family now. Concerning family, she wondered what happened to Paxton. She was sure Talon had him killed. These people were primitive compared to Earth's judicial systems. Talon? What happened with Paxton? He let out a long breath.
I put him in holding until the council convened to make a decision. Most of his followers were killed when we fought to get to you.
What was the council's decision? His hold on her tightened.
They didn't make one. The next day, Dylan found him hanging, strangled to death with a blanket.
Cassie sat up and brushed her fingers over his cheek. Talon, I'm so sorry. He shrugged.
It is what it is. He didn't seem very stable at the end.
But you didn't kill him or put him to death?
No, Cassie. We may be a simple people, but we are not murderers. I would never let someone hurt another in such a manner. He'd die a quick death had he hurt you in my presence, but once I saw the madness in his eyes, I knew the brother I once knew was gone. Long gone.
Maybe she was wrong about this society. Talon loved every one of his people. Why couldn't he love her too? Did she love him?
You're very quiet. What are you thinking in that busy head of yours? Tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen.
What did she want? Bella was the happiest woman in the entire galaxy, and she glowed. She found her happily ever after. And that's what I want. He kissed the top of her head lying against his chest.
That's what I want for you too. But if you don't take the chance to read the story, how will you know if you get what you want? Pick up that book and let me create your fairy tale ending.
Helen, that's beautiful. Tears trailed down her cheeks. She made her decision. She would put herself, heart and soul, into loving Talon and the child within her. If it didn't work, then so be it. At least she tried. He stood, lifting Cassie with him, then set her on the recliner as he got down on one knee in front of her.
Cassie, I know we haven't had the usual dating ritual you want, but I know I will always love you. And I hope you'll give yourself the chance to fall in love with me. Cassandra Grimaldi, will you be my mate? My wife?
She threw her arms around him, tears free-flowing. Yes, Talon, I will give myself the chance to love you more than I already do. Talon kissed his mate quickly.
Let's go see Jerry and tell her.
Okay, but can we eat first? I'm starving. 30. Well, shit. You're right. Cassie paced the floor in Jerry's apartment. My dad is going to flip out. Like, really shit an Easter egg. Cassie, your father can't be that bad, Jerry started. I'm so glad you loved Aurora. I knew you would, and you will be happy there. She cleared her throat. As far as your dad, you're a grown adult, capable of making your own decisions. I know, but still. Talon walked into the room, tugging the dress shirt under his new suit.
How can humans wear this stuff?
Both Jerry and Cassie laughed, then squealed. Talon, you look dashing in a suit and tie. Cassie winked at him. Yeah, hot as hell if you ask me. He pulled on his shirt collar.
Hot is right.
Cassie grabbed his arm. Stop whining. Dad will respect you more if you talk the talk. If you're on his level, then everything will be better. A few hours later, Cassie pushed the doorbell of her father's house. She remembered the concern in her father's voice when she called him earlier, asking if she and another could have dinner with them tonight. Now, as she thought about it, that was the first time she'd ever asked to visit. All other times, she had to be invited before thinking about coming. No wonder her dad was worried. Estrella answered the door and ushered them into the den. Cassie's father turned from the built-in bar, drink in hand.
Cassie, my girl.
He gave her a hug, then stepped back to wait for introductions.
Dad, this is Talon Arctos. He and I are engaged. Her dad reached out an arm to shake Talon's hand. Talon stared at the hand as Cassie realized Talon wasn't aware of Earth's handshake custom. Fortunately, Talon mimicked the action, lifting his hand next to her dad's. Her father grabbed his hand and shook. This was going to be a long night. A second later, Ivy waltzed in with a huge grin and winked at Cassie. She had discussed Talon with Ivy and Ivan, and both met her new mate already. It was weird calling him her mate, but it was true. Ivy had mentioned asking Jerry about her services and hopefully visiting Aurora to see about getting her own man and checking up on Cassie. The thoughtful look on Jerry's face told Cassie the matchmaker was already on the job. They took seats on leather sofas that cost more than her apartment, and as Cassie expected, Victoria waited for the right time for her dramatic entrance. Everyone stood. Oh, who do we have here, Cassie? A coworker, perhaps? Cassie read between the lines. Victoria was saying Talon was too good-looking to be a boyfriend for her overweight, grungy self. He had to be someone else. Ivy lifted a perfect brow, waiting for Cassie to tear Victoria a new one. But she would behave, even if it killed her. She didn't really want to hurt her father's feelings. Actually, Victoria, this is my fiancé, Talon. He is the CEO of his organization, not exactly a coworker. She flashed a smug smile at her father's wife. I see. Victoria stretched out a hand, and Talon did the same. They all sat again in an awkward silence. Cassie felt like throwing up. She wasn't sure if it was nerves or the baby. Shit. She hated being this way. This wasn't like her to cower in a tough situation. Her father raised her better than that. She cleared her throat. How much longer until dinner is ready? We decided on steaks tonight, so it will be a bit before everything is ready. Can I get you a snack? Of course. With me being pregnant. She made kissy lips at Cassie's father, which made her want to puke more. I feel like I'm eating all the time. She giggled and practically wrapped herself around her dad's side. And fate hated Cassie even more because she'd gained at least 30 pounds, while Victoria looked exactly the same, except for a slight bump on her abdomen. Really, Victoria? Ivy sighed and stood on 4-inch heels. How in the world she could wear them was beyond Cassie. Ivy was just as big as Cassie, but her sense of style kicked Cassie's in the ass. Big time. You've barely gained any weight. I think I put on more pounds thinking of food than you have during your pregnancy so far. Cassie coughed to hide a giggle and saw Victoria throw a hateful glare at Ivy. Oh, Talon and I eat our steak a special way now. Victoria, could you and he visit the chef, then Talon can help prepare our meals?" She got 3 strange looks. She smiled at Talon. "You know how I like mine more rare than before?" His head bobbed.
"Ah, yes."
He stood and gestured for Victoria to lead. Cassie whispered to his back, "Careful, she'll eat you alive." A bit louder than she intended, and her father frowned at her. After the 2 departing were out of hearing range, Ivy following them, her father stood and headed for the bar.
"Cassie, I understand your feelings for my wife, but I appreciate you keeping them to yourself."
He poured a dark liquid from a crystal decanter.
"Would you like a drink? You always like my scotch."
"Thank you, but a glass of water would be great." He turned and raised a brow at her, but said nothing as he opened the cooler for a bottled water. He handed the plastic container to her and sat in his dark leather chair.
"So, I see you're here to show us your new husband-to-be. I hope this one lasts more than 6 months."
Fire burned in Cassie's stomach. God, she was so stupid to come here. Why did she think her father would approve and be happy for her? Ever since her mom died, he'd become a different person. Look who he finally married, for fuck's sake. She twisted off the lid and drank to cool down her temper. "So do I, Dad. We have a lot in common, so I think this will last a long time."
"Is he really the CEO of a corporation?"
"He goes by a different title, but the job is the same. He really loves what he does and his people. That's one thing I love about him." Her father snorted, and that just pissed her off more. Even that isn't good enough. What did it take?
"At least he doesn't need to empty your bank account and run like the other one."
Cassie's mouth dropped open. "You know about that?"
"Of course I know. And that's why I thought you were coming over here, to ask for money."
"I would never ask anyone for money, even you."
"I know, and it makes me damn proud of you."
Cassie opened her mouth, ready with a snide remark. Then his words sank in. "You're proud of me?" A sigh escaped her father as he stood and slowly paced.
"Cassandra, when you were born, your mother and I were the happiest people on earth. The doctors told us it would be a miracle if your mother ever conceived. We proved them wrong and made our own miracle. You. Around that time, I had risen quickly in the company and was rubbing elbows with the high-end and elite. It seemed like all the men had a trophy wife, half their age, who didn't have a clue about anything but spending money. One of those bastards suddenly died in a car wreck, leaving his eye candy nothing of his estate. She took the family to court for a piece of the pie. The media painted her as a gold digger who purposely ruined a family to marry the husband and father of 6 children. She got a small amount of money in the end, but nothing close to the millions she was asking for. She disappeared from society for a while, then popped back into the media when she married some millionaire in California. But she made me realize that without a rich man to cling to, she had nothing, not even a roof to put over her head. I swore to myself that my daughter would never be like her. My daughter would be strong and independent. She wouldn't need to depend on anyone for anything, even when she was down.
He pointed his glass at her.
And that's exactly what you've become. Someone who doesn't need anyone, including her father. When your mother died, I was devastated. I loved her still after all the years. I tried to bury the hurt with other women, but that didn't work. I was in constant pain because everything reminded me of her. Even at the office, her memory followed me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could go on.
Cassie gasped. Her father looked at her, tears in his eyes as well as hers. "Dad, I didn't—"
Let me finish. I have things to say that I should have said many years ago. When I met Victoria, her smile eased my pain. Being around her brought me joy I hadn't felt since your mother passed. Don't get me wrong, I still love your mother. But Victoria has made me happy again. She's different than your mother. Your mother was a woman who owned my heart completely. Victoria has given my life purpose again. Gives me a reason to want to stick around, if you know what I mean. She may seem like a gold-digging type, but her family has their own money, and she has a huge trust fund. She grew up with money, so she's used to the biggest and brightest. It's also why she's spoiled in her own way. But she can get what she wants with or without me. She doesn't need me to have the best life can offer. She chooses to be with me because she loves me. He laughed. I don't know what she sees in an old bastard like me, but I'm glad she does.
"31. He refilled his drink and sat on the sofa across from Cassie.
I know I've never said this to you, but I've always wanted you to be happy. I'm sorry I was so hard on you about your weight. I understood how society would look down on you if you were different, and it wouldn't be good. I knew you'd suffer, and I wanted so much to keep that hurt away from you. But I couldn't. I had failed you as a loving father. So I backed away from you, made sure I didn't fail in raising you tough as nails to survive that suffering, all the meanness others would dole out to you. That I have succeeded with, apparently too well. You've hardened your heart against me, for well-deserved reasons. And if Talon is the one who makes you happy, then I suggest you take that feeling and run with it. Take as much happiness as you can, because the world won't give it often. I want you to know you can depend on me and ask for anything without me thinking less of you because I love you, Cassandra. I always have, and I always will.
Cassie couldn't take any more. She hurried around the coffee table and dove onto the sofa to hug her dad and cry on his shoulder. For so many years, she had felt isolated, unloved because of her weight and other things. So much of her childhood made sense now. Her dad didn't want her to grow up depending on others to create her happiness. He wanted her to make it for herself, and she had. With a big sniffle, she sat back from his shoulder. Dad, Talon makes me happy. Very happy. I know he loves me because he shows me. I'm not afraid to love him anymore. Even though I am strong on my own, I need him to lean on when I'm sad and to share my moments of happiness. She squeezed her eyes closed. Like when our baby is born in a few months. Cassie peeked open an eye to see if her dad had a heart attack. He sat with wide eyes and a smile.
I didn't see that coming, but all right. I'm going to be a dad again, and a grandfather. How many people can say that?
Several older movie stars, Dad.
Okay, so I'm not the only one. Big deal.
He hugged her again. The clacking of Victoria's high heels against the wood floor echoed down the hallway. Father and daughter quickly drew away from each other, wiping tears from eyes. Oh, Dad, I almost forgot. Talon and I are building a house in a very remote location. It'll be somewhat difficult to reach me, but I have a special phone to give you that is a step above FaceTiming. It actually projects an image of me. It's cool.
Can we not visit? I will fly anywhere to see my grandchild, and you. It's not like you're moving to another planet.
We'll talk about all that later. When she could figure out how to tell her dad she really was going to another planet without him wanting to have her committed. I bet dinner is just about ready. Victoria and Talon stepped into the room. Dinner is ready, if everyone is, Victoria said, looking from her dad to her and back. Is everything okay? Cassie smiled. Yeah, everything is more than okay. Before she and her father stepped into the hall, Cassie hugged her father. Dad, I love you too. She stopped and let others go ahead before walking into Talon's open arms for a hug. Thank you for being here with me. He cupped her cheek and stared deep into her eyes.
I will always be by your side. Always, love.
Emotions overflowed inside her. She hugged him tighter and let the worry and stress of most of her life slide off her shoulders. She was free to be herself and know that she'd found the man who would cherish her exactly as she was. It was finally her turn to be happy, and she was going to embrace it. "I love you," she said to Talon softly. "I didn't think it possible, but our one night together has made me the happiest woman in every known galaxy." She met his gaze and smiled. "I'll miss my dad, but I'm glad I have you now."
"You have me and our cub. We'll always take care of you."
That was the sweetest promise she'd ever heard, and it filled her with joy. Epilogue. Jerry glanced at her immaculate office. Another assistant gone. Maybe she should hire a guy, and he might last longer. The idea had distinct possibilities. Now it was time to figure out which of the clients wanting her services should be matched next. She thought about a recent letter she'd gotten, or the certain communication with another planet. Things could get interesting if she went that route. This has been Barefoot and Pregnant, BBW Paranormal Shapeshifter Romance, Paranormal Dating Agency, Book 10. Written by Millie Taiden. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Copyright, Lifetime, by Millie Taiden. Production copyright, 2017, by Millie Taiden.